30th, 7 a.m., as we got a lot of college football to talk about today. Trent Dilfer going to be with us at 7:15. Jake Rowe going to talk some Georgia Bulldogs as they've got a big one coming up this weekend at 8:15. Ben Hartsock talks some Ohio State as a massive matchup for the Buckeyes this weekend at 9 a.m. At 9:20, Wilson Alexander updates us on LSU. Some injury news coming up out of LSU last couple of days. They have the week off, but they'll get a big one against Alabama next. Some college football last night, World Series last night. GMAC Yankees bats finally show up for that bullpen game last night.
It was a pretty entertaining game. I mean, starting with Freddie early, and then obviously Volpe's home run, grand slam was pretty wild as well. So it was entertaining, even though we were on the losing side. It does give me hope to see Landon Knack out there. He just doesn't look like a professional athlete.
Whoa.
The Dodgers relief pitcher. I mean, he doesn't. Does he not? I mean, he's got, especially a baseball player, like no butt, big body, like just funny. And it gives me hope to tell you, hey, you know what? Things can happen. Things can happen. Professional athletes come in all shapes and sizes. But either way, we saved all of our best arms, got out of there with a 7-run defeat, and hopefully we can clinch it tonight.
It's they'll have to do it against Garrett Cole, who will go for the Yankees tonight. Flaherty will go for the Dodgers. So it'll be a good one there at Yankee Stadium. 7:08 on Fox. You will get first pitch. Dodgers lead the World Series 3-1. And also tonight, Jacksonville State is at Liberty. That's at 6 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. Jack State 4-3, Liberty 5-1, their first loss of the season last week. And then on ESPN2, after that, you'll get Kennesaw State, got their first win of the season, 1-6, going up against Western Kentucky, who is 5-2 on the year. You had some college football last night. Louisiana, the Cajuns, they get the win over Texas State 23-17. They're 7-1, by the way. A quiet 7-1. Not a lot of folks talking about the Cajuns and what they've done so far this year. 12-0 all time against Texas State. Texas State had 2 turnovers in the game. It was kind of it was actually a pretty good football game, pretty competitive. And those 2 mistakes costly for Texas State. Both teams ran the ball well. New Mexico State gets blasted by FIU last night at Pitbull Stadium, 34-13. Keon Jenkins, 18-27, 338 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, no picks. How about Eric Rivers last night for FIU? 11 catches, 295 yards, 3 of those for touchdowns. He had 3 50-yard catches last night. A new school record, obviously, 295 receiving yards for Eric Rivers. That was a massive night for him. Your total yardage in that one was 438 to 246. New Mexico State, kind of a no-show there. They go to 2-6. It's not the best.
Bad box score?
New Mexico State quarterbacks combined to go 7 of 19, 30 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I've seen better. Good? I've seen better performances through the air.
1 or 2 more?
On a scale of 1 to Connor Wigman last week, where does that rank?
That's it's in the same neighborhood. Now, not to be outdone, Sam Houston State takes out La Tech last night 9-3. That's a real score. Football, not baseball.
Correct, right. Yeah,
Football score. 9-3. Sam Houston goes
Volpe
7-2.
hit a grand slam for them too.
They needed it. Actually, even if he would have hit that grand slam for La Tech, it still would have been enough. They go 3-5. Not to be outdone by that New Mexico State performance. The quarterbacks in this game, 2 for both teams, by the way, 4 total, combined to go 42 of 66, 370, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions last night.
And the problem is?
It was inefficient, and there were multiple incompletions all over the place. Those 2 teams last night combined to go 12 of 31 on 3rd down, 0 of 5 on 4th down. That was bad ball.
I would say that's considerably downtrending in ball.
Well, somehow Sam Houston State found a way to get a win. So
yes, hey, win's a win. Help me understand what's happened to La Tech. I mean, ever since Skip Holtz left, and they've had moments, right? Like, that's a place where you should have some success. Like, you have players that are in your backyard. Like, that should not be one of the worst programs in America. And Sonny Cumbie comes in. I know they were trying to go air raid. They were looking at Graham Harrell. They were looking at Sonny Cumbie. They ended up going with Sonny Cumbie. And they can't score. I mean, I don't understand how the air raid all of a sudden doesn't work. How is that possible?
Yeah, no, he turned over play calling earlier this year, and that was just weird to see in and of itself. I mean, just to further up the sloppiness of last night, La Tech fumbled 4 times, lost 3. Sam Houston fumbled twice, lost 1. I don't know if there's a lack of commitment, Greg, because we look and see what Skip Holtz is doing here in Birmingham in the USFL, and you just wonder, like, how did you get rid of that guy? And then I think maybe has there been more of a commitment in Lafayette to football? Had there been other places? I don't think there's been more of a commitment to Monroe. Maybe in the last 6 or 8 months, but over time, I don't think that they've sort of just pulled ahead of Louisiana Tech. I do think some of the realignment stuff has hurt them because of how good the Sun Belt has been the last couple of years. But it's odd to see because, I mean, I've told stories. We played against La Tech when I was in college. We played the Rattay brothers, one of the Rattay brothers, and they ran similar to air raid back then. And every week it was 570 yards passing, 620 yards passing, and they were good. La Tech pushed us to the limit. La Tech beat Alabama when I was in school. I mean, that's like
that didn't happen.
They had. I mean, I'm just here to tell you.
No,
they were.
La Monroe never
program.
beat Bama either. That never happened.
Never took place.
La Monroe, La Tech. None of those things ever happened.
So it's one of those. It's one of those lower tier schools that I, like you, have kind of wondered over time, like how have we gotten to this point? Because it feels like number one. The recruiting should work in today's college football where you're not going to get 4 and 5 stars, but you can maybe get some of those guys when they want to come back home because there's so many. And there's tell me there's not diamonds in the rough in Louisiana. I mean, of course there are. They're everywhere. So it's a little odd to think that you can't find a way to make it work somehow. But times are tough in Louisiana Tech right now.
It's really crazy because it is one of those programs, and I'm with you 100%. I think it's one of those programs where I know the expectation level is not outrageous. No one expects them to go 10 wins, but they should be one of those problem programs. You know what they should be the equivalent to? Like a Texas State. Like Texas State is not really a team you want to mess around with. UTSA, not really a team you want to mess around with. Louisiana Tech should be that as well. Like they have a proud and storied tradition. They have historical significance. They have Hall of Famers that walked the halls of Ruston, Louisiana. I mean, there's no reason. They have decent financial support, by the way, on the private side. I'm not saying that they're, super wealthy by any stretch, but like there are families that are all in on Louisiana Tech sports and they're good in women's hoop. Like they're good in other sports. Like what's the deal with football? And you're in a very talent rich section of the country. And I would think, me, we've had this conversation about other places. Hey, let's just, and Miami's used this with great success. Hey, let guys go away when they leave high school. And then when they enter the portal after a year or two, hey, come on home, guys. Come on home. Come play for Miami. NC State's used the same approach. Carolina guys leave North Carolina, go play at, say, Ohio State. Doesn't work out for them. Hey, come on home. Come be a part of the Wolfpack. Why would that not be the approach at the Louisiana schools, primarily Louisiana Tech? So it's a bit troubling. I think it speaks to how good a coach Skip Holtz is. I don't think I need to convince anybody of that in this part of the country, but it also is just infuriating a little bit for a guy that kind of supports that program. And there's just certain programs I have admiration for, and that's one of them. And it's just kind of frustrating to see him struggle as much as they do.
Well, same thing with Gary Croton. What a good coach he was. By the way, your Winsipedia all-time record, Louisiana Tech 3-2-0 against Alabama. Now, one of those was a forfeit due to NCAA issues. However, the last two, 1997, Louisiana Tech won 26-20 in Tuscaloosa. 1999, Louisiana Tech won 29-28 in Birmingham. On the field, actually, not due to NCAA. 1966, Bama 34-0. And 1992, 13-0 at Legion Field. I was at that one. Bama won. Needed a Chris Donnelly returned interception for touchdown, I believe, late. And then 56-3 in Tuscaloosa in 93. That one forfeited. So it is weird that they've had proud coaches. They've had good coaches. They've had great players. And for some reason in Ruston, it just hasn't been able to consistently go. But either way. All right, I mentioned we got some college football coming up tonight. We got Trent Dilfer coming up in a few minutes. I wanted to quickly ask you about the ACC. And because you actually brought up a couple of teams, like who wouldn't want to be a member of a Wolfpack? I think everybody would want to go be a member of that after they went somewhere else. We get Pitt and SMU this weekend, Greg. We know that those two teams undefeated in conference play, one's not going to be. But there's a chance that 3 ACC teams could finish the year undefeated in conference play.
Yes.
Also a chance that a couple Big Ten teams could finish the year undefeated in conference play. Oregon, Penn State, Indiana. Do you believe as of right now this is going to be a problem?
No.
You think this works itself out?
I think it always seemingly does. And I know that last year it didn't, right? Last year was the anomaly year where everybody that needed to win to create chaos won, including Florida State, including Alabama. Georgia had just one loss, so they had I think it's still a pretty decent argument. You had Washington that won over Oregon when everyone thought Oregon was just a shoo-in. Washington beat them twice. So we've seen years where the stars align and the good teams don't get got. But think about what had to transpire last year for it to end up the way it ended up. I mean, a 4th and 31 conversion had to go down. Florida State had to basically pitch a shutout down the stretch against Louisville and other teams that they faced in the waning months of the season, waning weeks of the season, which is highly unlikely. I mean, Washington had to survive like 4 close calls down the stretch, starting from the Arizona game all the way through. It was not a comfortable finish for them whatsoever. So, yeah, I mean, the stars have to align, but it can happen, and it has happened in the past. So, I don't think it's likely, but it's certainly possible.
Okay. It's just interesting
to look at. Do you think it's
going
to happen?
In the Big Ten, I think there's a good chance, yes.
You think Penn State beats Ohio State and doesn't lose the rest of the way?
I'm not super confident in the beating Ohio State part, but I feel better about it this year than I have in the last 10. I mean, I told you that Ohio State tape from last week did a number on me.
It's
for that team. I mean, I am not feeling great about any part of that team. I think if they play a quarterback that doesn't try to emulate somebody else on every snap last week, there's a good chance they lose that game. But he's got to do jump balls and no looks and back foot throws, fadeaways every time. So Washington at Purdue, at Minnesota, Maryland is what Penn State would have the rest of the way. Now, can Washington get them? Yeah. Minnesota, probably on the road. November 23rd could. But you get this one, and all of a sudden, I think they got a good chance to do it. So it's just an interesting conversation that could somebody find a way. These two conferences, could 3 teams find a way to be undefeated in conference play? And then kind of here we go with the tiebreaker scenario and hold it. And by the way, if that happens, do you want to be one of the teams that goes to the conference championship game?
No.
A lot of people agree with you there. That I want to be the team left out and probably guaranteed to be the 5 seed at that point.
Well, I mean, but the team that loses in the conference championship game might be given the benefit of the doubt, so you lose control of your own destiny. But I don't know. I don't think, like, if I'm Indiana, for example, I somehow magically get a win against Ohio State. I am somehow magically 12-0. Yeah, I'm fine sitting on the sideline. Just put me in the playoff. We're good. I don't want to lose by 30 to Oregon and have all the shine. I don't have all the shine to potentially be washed away.
All right. Your CBD store has products that can help you get a better night's sleep. Gut health skincare can help you with that. For your pet also, arthritis, anxiety, gut health skincare for your pet. They have products, snacks, and treats that can help them. First company to have USDA certified organic oil supplements. They have the stamp seal on those products. At the largest brick-and-mortar CBD retailer in the world, your CBD store has 3 locations to serve you. Highway 280 by Bailey Brothers, 150 by the Cage in Cleveland, Trussville just off 459, and now downtown in 5 Points. Your CBD store where good health hits home. Trent Dilfer, UAB head coach, joins us next on Mac and Cube in the morning. Welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Jocks 94.5. Listen online, jocksfm.com. Apps in your app store, iPhone, Android. You can download it for free. Also, tell your home smart speaker to enable the Jock skill. You can tune in that way. Gusty Goulis, the Gusty Goulis Group, want to help you get into a new home. Call 205-542-1996. Serves more than 3,000 home buyers and sellers in the greater Birmingham area. You can trust Gusty's aggressive and proven selling system. He's got what it takes to attract hundreds of qualified buyers that want your home. Gusty Goulis Group's been marketing. They know how to get the homes that are going to come up on the market as soon as they're going to be there and how to make top dollar on your home. Maybe you want to know the value of your home right now with very little information. Go to gustygoulisgroup.com on your phone, button at the top of the page. Press that button. You can find out what your home's worth right now so the Gusty Goulis Group can start working for you. 830 5-star Google reviews. Call 205-542-1996 or visit gustygoulisgroup.com. All right, to the Buyers Right hotline. Welcome in UAB head football coach Trent Dilfer to the show. Coach, how are we doing this morning? How's the team feeling right now?
I mean, you would have thought we were 6-1 if you went to practice yesterday. Energetic, fired up. I think came off the bye week healthier, but also got better. Guys had a great Tuesday and probably our best practice of the year. So that hasn't meant much for us this year, but it's encouraging to see him come in the office and get after it and have great energy and enthusiasm and push to try to find a way to win a game.
How would you assess the bye week and how things went last week? I mean, when we talked to you last week, you were kind of in the middle of it. I know you gave some guys some time over the weekend, but how would you kind of sum up the progress that was made in the off week?
I think focused, 2 extremely physical days. One, I'd say the third day was half pretty physical and then half kind of putting a bow on it. I thought some of the rotational players that were healthy made some significant improvements. I think we found some, what we'd call, backup type players that are now fighting for more playing time because how they performed during the bye week. And then obviously the ones that were banged up that we know are key contributors had the chance to rest their bodies, but still get good indie work. Strength and conditioning was a huge focus last week for us. I am a big believer that some teams get stronger during the season and some get weaker. We want to be one of the teams that get stronger. So we had 4 really good lift days, 3 conditioning days. So even if they weren't practicing, they're physically getting better. So I was really encouraged by the week. And I do think that the 3 days to kind of rest their souls and their brains a little bit. I know when I met with them Sunday night, there was a renewing in them, so to speak. You could tell there was a little bit of a burden lift off of their shoulders. They were fresher, they were more engaged. So, again, I've been tricked a lot this year, but hopefully we handled it better than we did the first bye week.
When you talked about some of those younger guys that are pushing for some spots, anything drastically changed from a depth chart, depth perception as far as starters, anything like that heading into this game against Tulsa?
I think we're looking at some changes on the offensive line. I think there's a lot of competition there. We're looking to play multiple offensive linemen, and I think we saw some young guys that, or some guys maybe haven't seen play. Caleb Perez is a player that nobody really knows about. He was a rotational player for Duke. We signed him late in the portal, had a really, really bad injury at Duke, and we kind of took a chance on the injury. We've taken our time with him. He's rehabbed really well, recovered actually better and faster than we thought he would. And he adds experience, size, athleticism to our offensive line. Also a poise. He's played a lot of ACC football. He's played against the Florida States and the Clemsons and played at a high level. So he's starting to kind of make his mark in the rotation. I think moving J.D. Morgan inside instead of left tackle has really helped us inside. He's a natural guard. We're having him play at tackle this year, which is probably our fault. But now moving him back inside, he's much more comfortable. Jordan Hall, who's been a young tackle for us, continues to get better. played against USF most of the game, got better during the bye week. On the defensive line, Iman Smalls, again, has been dealing with an injury all year long, getting healthier and fighting for rotational time there. So there's a couple others too, but I really thought the line of scrimmage, which has been our weakness, obviously, guys made a lot of improvements. And a receiver, I would say Corey Milner is a guy that has shown flashes for us. I think he's kind of taken a jump during the bye week. And then the quarterback, I thought Jalen Kitna really had a phenomenal bye week and then built off of it yesterday in practice.
Isn't it across? Like, I'm watching a bunch of teams that are playing at a comparable level to UAB last night, and I'm seeing offensive line play, and frankly, defensive line play in most cases that is just abhorrent. I don't really know how to describe it. It's like, and honestly, it's not exclusive to G5 football. I see it at Ohio State. So you're the son of his offensive line coach. Why do you think the line of scrimmage is such a problem right now, kind of across the board in the sport?
XO over fundamentals. I think also there's been some very poor technique that has been adopted over the past 10 years on the offensive line. I think some of your core offensive line run schemes and pass protections have been abandoned. You know, everything's into the sort world now. So as you sort protections, you tend to get more depth. You get higher, you get looser, you don't anchor, you don't play with strength and power. I think length to strength, which is something I'm probably the biggest believer in the world on length to strength, where you extend, when your arms are extended and you're in triple extension with your hips, it's the strongest position in football. That's been abandoned in a lot of technical teaching. Just what things became vogue because they worked. You know, the schemes worked. And then you had a new generation of coaches come through like, oh, this is the way to do it. And some of it is really good. Some of it's very innovative. Some of it's helped schematically on the offensive line, but most of it has hurt. Very few teams run true A-gap power with really strong ace blocks that are square. Instead, they're burying their head in there. They're abandoning double teams too soon. Duo isn't run as often in college football anymore, which teaches really good principles on the offensive line. Snatch pass protection. If you go back and watch the greatest pass protectors of all time, they were quick setting snatch players. Like they didn't worry about these big, giant vertical sets or wide sets. They jumped your butt. They extended their hands. They latched inside. They were length to strength, and they stoned you at the line of scrimmage. I mean, I can go through – I'm kind of an offensive line historian, so I could just go through tackle and guard and centers over time, and that was the best way to protect. Well, but there's also looseness in those protections. You can't sort all the fire zones and the mug pressures and all these different things. So people said, well, let's just retreat and let's see it all unfold and then catch them. And I think what you're seeing in offensive line, and that's just what your eyes saw last night. I watched a little bit of those games where belly bumping in the run game and catching in the pass game. Is that a fair way to say it?
That belly bumping feels a little too. Belly bumping feels a little bit too physical for some of the stuff I saw last night.
Oh yeah,
I don't know about you.
No, I call it titty tilting. You know, you see a lot of like titty tilting on the offensive line, belly bumping, catching. Like it's. And listen, we fall into it at times. I'm over in our offensive line indie drill every single day, just harping on stuff that I grew up with in the 80s and the 90s. You know, like, hey, this stuff still works now. And you got to incorporate it into your schemes. But it's been a challenge for me too. You know, it's I've had to learn some of the newer things and the pros with them, but I think very few of the pros outweigh the cons. And I'm more, and you see Jim Harbaugh did this at Michigan. He's doing it with the Chargers. Like it's going back to like you play physical at the line of scrimmage, you play low to high, you play a triple extension, you play with length to strength, you snatch their butts at the line of scrimmage. And you don't, you know, because the hardest thing for defensive linemen is to restart. Now you talk to any defensive lineman, they're like, when we have to restart, we're 300 pounds. It's really hard to be twitchy off the line, then get stopped, and then start again. If you give a 300-pounder 2-3 steps to gain momentum and have his hand, his ability to use his hands, well, now you're playing catch. Well, I don't care if you're 330 pounds. If you're catching 300 pounds, you're still going to go backwards. So to get them to snatch them, to stone them, and then make them restart, right? Now you give your quarterback a better chance, but everybody's scared of speed rushes and games and passing off games and all these different things instead of just handling, creating a wall at the line of scrimmage and then making that wall change and redirect.
It's interesting, Coach, you mentioned the pros of it. I wanted to ask you about different pros, and in a similar fashion to what Greg's describing with offensive line development, quarterback development through college into the NFL. There are a lot of people that are making a lot of noise about how many young quarterbacks are getting the start and then being benched. Where are you with just sort of quarterback development from college to the NFL right now?
Well, so when I was on ESPN, I got ridiculed. I mean, every single time I brought this up, why are we playing these young quarterbacks? Why? What everybody said, well, it just makes sense economically. And Peyton Manning did, and they'd always use the examples that worked. And I'm like, yeah, but the streets are littered with first-round picks that played too fast and weren't ready to play, and the confidence was just broken. And then luckily I had some advocates like Troy Aikman who did play early and would then still say, no, don't play him so soon. And now you're starting to see some of these analysts be like, oh, interesting. Now we have enough data to tell us it's probably not a good thing to play him early. And for every CJ Stroud, right, there are probably 15 others of us that were thrown out there too fast, weren't ready, hadn't had the true developmental model, hadn't had to earn it. I think there's another thing in football where you just earn it. Like you earn the right to be on your contract doesn't put you out there. Your performance, like life is still a meritocracy, and you need to earn it in front of your teammates. Be the best quarterback, not be the highest paid quarterback, be the best quarterback. So I think, I still believe they shouldn't play as soon in the NFL. I also think that even though the NFL game has morphed more towards the college game, and it is easier schematically to play earlier because there's more carryover, there's still not the complexity, especially in must-pass red zone 2-minute. You just took those three situations, must-pass downs, which are your second and longs, your third and longs, your red zone where you're going to have to throw it in the tight windows, and your end-of-half, end-of-game, your 2-minute situations. Those are totally different games in college football and the NFL, and the college quarterback hasn't had the experience doing it. So he thinks he does because he's had success doing it in the SEC, and the SEC is basically the NFL. No, it's not when it comes to those situations. Normal down and distance, yeah, there's some carryover, and guys can be successful. But really what you're seeing with young quarterbacks, this goes back to when I started at ESPN, started studying this stuff, is that even the young quarterbacks that have success, their success is really only coming on normal down and distance. Their success is coming on first and second down, balanced downs. Very rarely does a young quarterback in the NFL succeed in the red zone, on third down, and an end-of-half, end-of-game situations.
Great.
Well, that's where you make your money. That's for sure.
Exactly. Me and you lived it.
Well, it just the whole world opens up to you on first, second down when you're on schedule. But when you start seeing the exotics and stuff, and like you don't know where they're coming from, and you don't know who to block them with, and you start seeing them tilt coverage, and all of a sudden you're trying to get your protection sword, and then you look back up at the safeties, and all of a sudden these guys are in different spots. They might even be different players for all I know. Like, how did Eric Weddle turn into Ed Reed? Like, I don't know what just happened, but that guy wasn't there a second ago. Like, it's just, it's the worst.
I remember being in my 10th year, 11th year, and playing the Eagles. And I'd played every fire zone, every blitz, every exotic known to mankind. I mean, I played for the friggin' Ravens. You know what I mean? Like, they did everything. And I'd see it in practice. And then I'm playing the Eagles, and I'm having Will free safety on the scrimmage overload into the boundary. I'll never forget it. To my left, I'm in a 3-by-1. man, I tilt the protection. So I put it a full slide with the back going to handle extra because I knew the front side defensive end had light, his fingers were light, so I knew he was dropping. So I was going to overload the boundary. I'm wide 80. I'm just getting ready to say set hot. And the will free safety go back and cloud the they go back. The will jumps to the middle of the field. The free safety runs to the strong side of the field. They bring overload to the strong side and cloud the strong side with the free safety that was on the line of scrimmage to my left is now the high cloud safety to my right.
Oh,
and I went,
that's awful.
Dropping back, I'm like, what just happened? I've never seen anything like that in my life.
And you're in year 11.
I'm in year 11 or 10. I can't remember, but I was just like, what just happened? So imagine being, 23 years old and Heisman Trophy winner, and it's all been, roses and rainbows and roses for you. And you're on your first 3rd and 7 and you see that. You think you might start doubting yourself a little bit? And that's what happens to these guys. They start doubting what they see because they haven't seen it enough in practice or on film or watched. As I always said, when I went to Cleveland, I said, listen, I want to go to Cleveland and I'll be the sacrificial lamb. I know I'm not a great starter. I'm good enough to win us some games. I can balance this thing out. We can be an 8-8 football team. I remember telling the GM, I'm like, go draft a guy. I'll be the sacrificial lamb. Let him learn from my mistakes so he doesn't make them. And I think that's the model you need. You need the veteran quarterback that's good enough. Andy Dalton, still a pretty darn good player, right? Let him go make all the mistakes so Bryce can watch him make the mistakes and learn from his mistakes. John Kidna, Carson Palmer. Never forget, John's in Cincinnati. John's is still a pretty darn good player. I think he might have even made a Pro Bowl that year or threw for 3,500 yards, but they didn't win a ton of games. Carson got to sit there and watch it all. Watch all the mistakes. Watch John take the team. Watch the locker room dynamics. Watch the preparation. Watch the professionalism. So then by the time Carson took over, he had seen that. The Green Bay model with Aaron to Brett, Love to Aaron. You know what I mean? Like these guys get to watch the
Alex
other
Smith
guys.
to Mahomes. Like
Alex
it's
Smith to
the best player in the league just did it. Aaron Rodgers, the best player of his generation, just did it. I don't understand the rush. And I know social media and season tickets and all this stuff, everybody wants to see their young prize. These kids, especially after starting 13 games in college, Anthony Richardson wasn't good in college. He made the spectacular play, but he completed 55% of his passes in college. So it just blows my mind. I don't get it.
Do I have time for one more comment, or you guys?
No, you're good.
You have as much time as you want.
Interesting. I was brought to San Francisco to never play. Like I remember being signed, and I'm like, I'm done. Like I can't play, but I can help. And Norv was like, I got to get you to get this Alex Smith kid right. Right. So I remember the big thing was about how he played as much about how he prepared. So I was basically a player coach at the time, and I would get Alex and he'd want to leave at 7. I'm like, no, bro, we still got to watch all the normal down distance cutups again. We got to group them into weak side, strong side, backer profile, over, under fronts, load fronts, mugs. Like he'd be like, what? It'd be 10 o'clock at night and we'd leave. And remember, I had kids. He's a bachelor. He's 23 years old. Life's great now. I got kids at home. And I'm like, we're staying here until these are done. Next night, we got to watch the third down clip with the players. Then we got to watch it on our own. Then we got to figure out all these protection checks. We got to pat them. We got to wake up in the morning. We got to pat him. And he's like, what are you doing to me? He thought I was the devil for making him work so hard. He goes to Kansas City. Guess what he does with Mahomes? He does all the stuff that I had done with him. And that's kind of the cool thing about the quarterback fraternity is as we grow each other up, and we all take different roles in it. There's the superstars, there's the good players, there's the journeymen, but we all have an effect on kind of the landscape of the position moving forward. And if you're a young guy and you get to benefit from that, like Mahomes has benefited from Alex. And even though Favre and Rodgers didn't have this great relationship, I've talked to both of them about it. Favre was a preparation freak, and Aaron was trying to go home, and Brett be like, "Where you going home, dude? Like, we ain't done. Like, this is how it's done." Matt Hasselbeck, my time with him in Seattle, he goes to Andrew Luck. I'm talking to Andrew Luck before a Monday Night Football game. He goes, "Why'd you teach him all this stuff? He's torturing me." I'm like, "Because that's what it takes." I'm like, "That's what it takes." And I mean, I can think of these brutal nights in Seattle. 9:45. It's 38 degrees outside. The rain's slamming against the windows. We got to drive home 15 minutes to get to our houses. Matt wants to go home to his beautiful wife and his young kids. I'm like, "We're not done. We're not leaving until we're done. There are no office hours. It takes what it takes." And he's like, "Okay." And he goes to multiple Pro Bowls. And then he does it with Andrew Luck. Like I said, I mean, that is the behind the curtain look at what it takes to be great in the NFL. And I did it with my high school quarterbacks. I was meeting with the UAB quarterbacks, and I'm asking them to pad, 66 normal down and distance plays at 10 o'clock at night on a Tuesday. And they're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Well, Luther Richardson and Hank Brown did it for me in high school. Why wouldn't you do it?" I remember texting Hank. Just blew Jalen's mind. I'm like, I would text Hank right before I knew he was going to bed and be like, "Will you send me your padded plays? I need 15 padded plays now." He's like, "What?" "I'm going to bed." I'm like, "Well, get up and pad them. They're in tomorrow." I'd text him during third period and be like, "Hey, I'm thinking about running this today. Can you draw it up for me? Tell me how you like it. Tell me what receivers you want there. How would you protect this blitz?" But they would do it, and that's why they're really successful. So there's just a lonely work to this position that people need to understand.
Quickly, Coach, who did you get it from?
Craig Erickson is a guy I kind of learned the professionalism of. And then I just kind of figured it out when I was so broken and down and not a very good player. I had to dig myself out of a grave, and that's kind of how I did it.
There you go. Coach, we always appreciate it. Awesome stuff. Thank you so much for the insight, and good luck this weekend for homecoming against Tulsa. We'll catch up next week.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you. Trent Dilfer, head coach of the UAB Blazers, joining us on the Buyers Right Hotline. Really cool conversation about multiple things there with Trent. Game Day Men's Health wants to help you out. If you lack sleep, if you lack energy, if you feel on edge, could be the effects of low testosterone. So here's how Game Day Men's Health wants to help you. They want you to go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com, sign up for a free consultation today. Free. They're going to give you a PSA test for free, testosterone test for free, and then you have a baseline to see where you're at. Let's find out where your health is, and then let's see how Game Day Men's Health can help you. Also, that's not just the only thing that they offer there. They have other ways that they want to help you, weight loss programs and more. You can save 10% on any service they offer by mentioning Cube when you walk in the door. If you want to get your health right, it's Game Day Men's Health. Locker room environment, great people, low stress atmosphere, not going to push you into anything that you don't need, but they do want to help you feel better. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com today. Sign up for that free consultation. Just see where you are and see if they can help you. Back with more Mac and Cube next. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Great conversation with Trent Dilfer there, just talking a lot of different football items. And I think the reason that came up, Greg, is people look like you mentioned Anthony Richardson, 22, Bryce Young, 23, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Kenny Pickett. Not all those guys the same age, but younger quarterbacks that have not had success early and been thrown into action early. Will Levis looks like he might be heading down that path also. But then for all those guys, you get Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud, Bo Nix, Brock Purdy, Jalen Hurts. Some of those guys in college a little bit longer. That probably helped. Are getting to the NFL and still 4 years older than some of the rookies that are playing. But how can this be neutralized? Is it just not playing the guys as early? Is it that simple?
I think in a perfect world, you would have that bridge guy like Trent just described, whether it's an Alex Smith, whether it's I don't even really know who a good example would be beyond Alex Smith at this point. Andy Dalton is another good example there in Carolina. If you could find a guy at, the end of his career, Joe Flacco is another example. A guy that still maybe has 1 or 2 good years that is not trying to become like the franchise guy. It's one thing to have Baker Mayfield as your bridge guy. Baker Mayfield anticipates becoming the starter. I think it's a tough spot because the fan base, the ones that are buying tickets and supporting the program, now they have a voice. Social media is a very powerful tool. And back when I was playing, it was in existence, but it wasn't at its peak. And now the owners, they're not immune to hearing what the fans have to say. And let's be real. Do the fans know what the heck they're talking about most of the time? Not often. I mean, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, but it's not like they have a good pulse of the team and who needs to play and who wants to play and who's good and who's at practice and who's doing what they need to do to get on the field. So yeah, I think the fans have more say than ever before. And that's why these decisions are being made the way they're being made, and the rookie wage scale. Like, we got to find out if this guy can't go, we'll draft the next guy. And I think that's kind of dumb as well.
Ben Ledbetter tweeting into the show. That was so cool. If you want to be the best, you got to put in the work, especially in the lab. And then Alex Page tweets in at Greg McElroy, who is your guy that showed you the way in the league? Similar to what Dilfer's Dime just described.
Mark Brunell. I was with Mark Brunell my rookie year. And I'm telling you, I thought I knew football, and then I got to the league. I'm just telling you, the level of football that I learned, and people make fun of my career, I really don't care. I was up there and got paid to play for 3 years, and it was like going to med school for just football intelligence. And my physical skill set wouldn't allow me to thrive at that level. That's fine. But man, the amount of ball I learned at that level, and the cat and mouse game, and the intelligence that it requires to be an elite player at quarterback. I'm not saying at all positions, but at quarterback. At cerebral positions. I mean, these guys are geniuses. And their ability to process information and retain information and apply it and take it from the film room to the field. And having seen Tom Brady 5 times in person on the sideline, my mind was continuously blown. Seeing Aaron Rodgers on the field, seeing Ben Roethlisberger on the field 3 or 4 times. It's mind blowing, man. These guys are freaks, and it's amazing to watch. But yeah, I mean, something really happens when you can take the physical ability a la Mahomes and combine it with the work ethic, and then combine it with the ability to retain and process information. When you have all 3, you're cooking. Of course, the hardest thing to have is the skill set, because Mahomes' skill set is just freakish. But man, you look at a lot of these guys that are drafted at the top of the draft, there's not that big a gap between the best player in the world and the 50th best player in the world as far as talent. But the work ethic and the ability to process and the supporting cast, those 3 things really determine whether or not you're going to be good.
Absolutely. All right. We'll get to a break, come back, and talk a little bit more about quarterbacks, but go top 3 as well next on Mac and Cube in the morning. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Quickly, before we get to our top three. If you have wildlife issues in your home, squirrels in your attic, raccoon got into the garage, Wayne's can help. You hear us talking about your mosquitoes, your yard, but Wayne's wants to help you with wildlife removal as well. Something that if you have issues with around your home, Wayne's is going to be there to help you. They got professionals, Birmingham, Huntsville, that can help you out with this, GMAC, just one of the services that they offer our listeners.
Yeah, and the wildlife right now is great. Wildlife removal and exclusion services in Birmingham and Huntsville. Rodents, squirrels, raccoons, bats. They have a team of wildlife pros that know how to handle these invaders. And right now, you know that things are coming to a close tomorrow on the 31st. If you don't go and sign up with callwaynes.com, use the offer code JOCKS, you run the risk of losing the opportunity to get that first month free on Wayne's Lawn Service. So make sure you get out in front of that. You have just 24 more hours to do it. So go and do it today by calling 866-WAYNES1. Use the offer code JOCKS. You get that first month free. That's 866-WAYNES1. And let Wayne's continue to create your happy place.
All right, top three for today. Damian, what do we have on tap?
Oh, boy. With it being Halloween tomorrow, it's crazy that today is National Candy Corn Day.
Well, they know nobody wants it tomorrow.
Exactly. So that leads to, what are your top three overrated Halloween candies?
I don't feel like candy corn is highly rated by many.
There's a lot of people that eat it. Ugh.
I'm trying to think what I feel like people like that I feel like is
Banana Laffy Taffies.
I mean, I don't feel like people go crazy over Laffy Taffies. So, most overrated. I'm going to say Snickers, number one.
Oh,
I'm not saying it's, listen, again, okay.
In order for it to be overrated, it has to be rated high. Like, I agree with Cole.
like
You can like
this is
Snickers,
but the guy who wrote the article about me saying Shakespeare's is overrated. He's all mad. I didn't say Shakespeare's was bad. I said it's overrated. Like, you people treat it like it's Pequod's and it's not.
It was just surprising to hear such a heavy hitter be on the list. That's
Right.
what, yeah. That's what surprised me.
I'm also going to say, like, any of these sour things, any of them. Once again, they're fine, but they're just not amazing. So Sour Patch Kids, Sour Patch Garbage Pail Kids, Sour Patch Twizzlers, Sour Patch Nerds, all of that. Just sour, whatever. It's overrated. Not terrible, has its place, but just don't think it's what everybody else thinks it is. And finally, Three Musketeers or Milky Way. Take your pick. Those are not maybe even highly rated, but they're not good.
Yeah, that's for damn sure.
Great.
Yeah. I mean, anything with nougat, you can pretty much put on the overrated category for me. Three Musketeers, Snickers, not my thing. Also, not a huge fan of nuts in general, like Almond Joy, all those, like, you can have it. And then licorice. Anything licorice is overrated. And that includes red vines. That includes Twizzlers.
Are there people that like licorice, though?
I like
You
Twizzlers.
don't?
I'm fine with them.
I mean, Twizzlers are fine, but they're not, like, among the best. And red vines are better than Twizzlers. And anything black licorice, you can have.
Yeah.
Just burn
Yeah.
it to the ground.
Yeah, that's true.
All right.
Yes.
John?
Number one, Nestle Crunch. Number two, Baby Ruth. Number three, Skittles. Don't mind Skittles, just on Halloween, no thanks.
Wow.
Wait, so they're good, but not good on Halloween.
Correct.
Got it.
Respect that. Welcome back, McElroy, Cubelic in the morning. Jocks 94.5, 8 a.m. here, top of the hour. Day before Halloween, I'm going to be actually heading to a Halloween party at the elementary school in like 90 minutes. Not 100% sure what to expect. Saber, have you been to an elementary school Halloween party yet?
Not. I guess it wasn't a party. I guess it was some kind of festival or something. They had like you could go around and like play a couple games and do some stuff. This was maybe 7, 8, 9 years or so ago.
Yeah.
It was fine. It was weird. It was indoor fall festival almost, and I'm not gonna lie, I felt like it could have been stronger. But I'm not going to sit here and complain and be like, you know what, like throwing the ball in the bucket like the bozo. Getting like, all right, this could have been a lot easier, and yeah, the prizes could have been better. But you know what, it was for a good cause. Sure, fine, okay.
I'm trying to figure out, I guess, like I know some people are super into Halloween. I think it's kind of evident on The Office and some of their Halloween episodes.
Right? Yeah.
Like some adults are really into it.
Very much.
I fall in line probably more so with Jim Halpert. I'm not a big Halloween person. I never have been. It's not that I don't celebrate the fact that my kids are into it. I'm not too cool for school. Like if my kids really wanted me to dress up as, Thanos, I would do it.
Oh yeah, you got to.
But it's just not really my thing. I've never really been one. I've never really worn like a lot of jerseys. I've never really dressed as somebody else. Like I'm kind of just not one that's super festive. Now, Thanksgiving, all in. Christmas, all in. 4th of July, all in. Memorial Day, all in. Like all about, getting super into the festivities and embracing the holiday. But for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just because of how my life has kind of worked around football. It's just never really moved the needle for me until kids. Damian, I really hope you're not super into. I mean, you have no kids,
Right.
I really hope you're not super into Halloween.
No, I mean, I have I got some kids around my apartment that'll come by. I keep a little bit of candy for them, but it's not something I'm just like gung ho for. Like I'll dress up if there's like a Halloween party or something that's going on, but with it being on a Thursday, I'm kind of just chilling this year.
That is something
All
that
right.
I do feel a little bummed about, and that I've been in my house for 9, 10 years now, have yet to have a single trick-or-treater.
Really?
Yeah. Like there are kids
we
in the
have
neighborhood.
very few.
And I'm sure at some point, if they were consistently coming, I would get annoyed by it. But I'm like, I'm a homeowner. Like, come on. Like, at least someone. Now, I understand that, okay, there are no decorations out. But yes, I make sure the lights are on. There's at least something outside to say, hey, come and get it. But kids aren't doing it. So I'm like, all right, you kids. Like, okay, cool, fine. Because there was maybe 4 or 5 years or so ago, like, nobody came by. So I took the bowl of candy, went across the street and knocked on the door. I was like, hey, because one of the kids was named Drew. Here you go. To like dumped half the bowl into like his hands, and then went to the other side of the street, gave them to those kids. I'm like,
Yeah.
I understand y'all probably bust in somewhere else to go enjoy that neighborhood. I'm assuming probably Cole's neighborhood, because that's I think where everybody goes now is somewhere in Homewood.
Somewhere in Homewood.
That's where all the kids they bust
rich
in.
folk
Yeah.
neighborhood.
Correct. Right. Yeah.
No, but
That
even
makes
growing
sense.
up, I wasn't big in Halloween. Like I never went trick or treating for real. It just wasn't my thing. Like I don't mind like the dressing up stuff, because I mean, it's kind of the only day acceptable you could wear Power Ranger stuff in public and not be laughed at.
I mean, given your size, you're kind of can every single day. But sure, okay, fine, yeah.
But no, it's just never. I got with you, man. Like Halloween, okay. And then my nieces, they're into it. They want to dress up and stuff, and it's cool. But as I've gotten older, it's.
See, I've kind of fallen out of it the last maybe 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
But like I came dressed as Negan here one day. I was Smokey one day, whatever up here. It's like, am I going to wear a mask and have like all this extra stuff? No, that's a bit of work. But just wear a blue t-shirt, a Blackwood's blue hat, get some menthols dangling from my lip and a chain. I can be Smokey
There you
like that. That ain't hard.
Right.
Wear a leather jacket and bring a baseball bat. I'm Negan. Boom. Like it's not hard to do that, but you still have a lot of fun. See, that I don't mind. That I think is fun.
I can get on board with that. I might just put the 3 dots on my white shirt and say I'm a 3-hole punch version of Jim. That might be the play today. Or I'll just put a name tag on and say Brad. And I'll be Brad today or something along the lines of that. I don't know. It's never been my thing. I'm kind of with Damian, but I'm telling you, it has changed so drastically since I've had children.
Of course.
And since my children are old enough to enjoy it and to be excited about it, it has now gone from being an afterthought day for me and then our family, an afterthought day. And by the way, we have no trick-or-treaters either. I'm not sure why that is. I don't have the answer. But I always buy Halloween candy because it's the one time a year in which it's totally socially acceptable to check out with a 10-pound bag of candy. And it might live under my desk. That doesn't get eaten might live under my desk for the foreseeable future. But it's become a top 3 holiday in our house. I know that most people, Thanksgiving and Christmas are 1, 2, no doubt.
Oh, for sure.
Halloween, though, with kids, it's hard to beat. That's for sure. Look forward to checking out all of your kids' costumes. If there's any like sports related costumes, I think if you guys send those into the show, we'll probably retweet them. Damian, think we can make that happen tomorrow?
Absolutely.
And if they're doing it today, if the kids are all jacked up, sports related, we don't need to be retweeting pictures of Dracula. I don't know if that does a lot for us. So if your kids are dressing up as some type of sports figure, we're all for it. If you're dressing your kid up as Feinbaum, like we've seen multiple times at SEC Nation, we'll avoid that one.
That feels like you're calling DHRs. Like, you didn't have to do this. Come on now. Come on.
No, it's too much. It's too much.
It's too much.
It was good the first year, and now it's like 8 years in a row, and it's like, all right, this is getting weird. This is strange. I'd be more okay if you dressed him up as I-Man on
that makes
or
sense.
Legend,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
or someone like that,
The real heroes
from the
right,
Feinbaum
yeah.
show.
It-
Yes,
What are your boys this year?
Vince is going as Michael Jordan,
Okay.
Of course.
and yes, the great one. I'm not sure where that came from, by the way. It's not like we've had some Michael Jordan obsession in our home. I have constantly reminded him that Michael Jordan's the greatest basketball player of all time, but I don't really, it's not like we're watching Michael Jordan highlights on the regular. It's a little random, but pretty excited about it. Not going to lie. For him to reach that conclusion without me pushing him in that direction is exciting. And James Gray is going as a lion. But he would have gone as any animal that could roar at people and not get in trouble for it. So
he's about to have some
he
fun.
was lion, dinosaur, and when I told him that sharks don't roar, he decided that shark is no longer
Okay.
in the running.
Off the list.
Off the list. He wants to be able to roar at people, that's interesting personality trait. We'll see where that one goes. My middle child, we're going to keep an eye on him. He's a handful, but he is a character now. I will tell you that much. He is the best. I love that little buddy. And then May, our 7-month-old, will be going as a King Charles Cavalier, same costume as the boys wore, however many years ago.
There we go.
So,
Right.
There we go.
yeah.
So when the ranking show ends up on Halloween, are y'all going to do like CBS Sports
Last
did
year.
last night? Oh, yeah.
No, but that was last year. It ended up on Halloween last year, and it was
that's
a
right.
complete gut punch. Because it's like, Vince at the time was 4 years old. JG was 2. It was kind of his first go at it as a guy that, could enjoy Halloween. So no, not being able to do that last year was disappointing. But no, I did see one of the guys on the CBS deal dressed as the Rose Bowl. Did you see
cool.
that?
Yeah. It was it Randy Cross, I think? Yeah.
I think it was
That
Randy
kinda
Cross.
Cool. Yeah.
I think it was Randy Cross. That was pretty cool.
Zucker was
I didn't see.
would look like the live version of the Illinois uniform, the helmet. He had the old, leather helmet and old school. It basically looked like he wore like Illinois' uniform from a couple of weeks ago.
Or he dressed up as like a 1930s football player.
More or less, yeah.
John's living in the moment, saying he dressed up in the Illinois throwback from 2 weeks ago, but he just dressed up as a leather helmet football player.
Well, seeing as how we have someone that's in his 20s and 30s on the show, y'all could be thinking I'm talking about 1984 with a single bar face mask.
Those are the big shoulder
pads,
yeah,
right?
The big shoulder pad.
I wanted to make it known.
Tearaway jerseys.
Yes.
Well, I will say this. I don't know if you can get Halloween costumes, but I do know you can get everything else at the Pants Store. The Pants Store is your game day headquarters for the guys to choose from Bama or Auburn polos, hats, quarter zips, layers now as things start to cool off. You got famous brands like Horn Legend, Cutter and Buck, Antigua, Gentile. Nobody does game day apparel like the Pants Store. And ladies, they can get you game day ready as well, head to toe, with shoes, boots, romper, perfect dress, you name it, they have it. They have you covered. They also have the clear purses so that you can get through the security without any issues whatsoever. Free alterations to gift wraps available. Sip on down to the Pants Store for all your game day needs. All right, we're going to take an early break here, come back momentarily, and we're going to dive in here at the bottom of the hour, so about 19 minutes from now, dive into some of the games this weekend. We haven't really started to flip things forward, but we have some big matchups coming up. Penn State, Ohio State. You're going to sit there and think, why does that matter to me? I'm an Auburn fan or an Alabama fan. Why does Ohio State and Penn State matter? I'll explain why, guys, because I went through this playoff thing yesterday. We're starting to dive into the playoff a bit in preparation for the show next Tuesday. And there are a lot fewer spots than you think. And I'll explain why here in just a little bit. But when we come back, we'll have Jake Rowe. He's going to join us and help break down Georgia as they prepare to take on an improved Florida Gator football team. It's next on McElroy and Cubelic. Good morning, Jocks 94.5. Welcome back. McElroy, Cubelic in the morning, Jocks 94.5. Jake Rowe from Dogs HQ joining us here in just a minute. But before we get to him, tell you about my friends at Polar Bear Services. They can do so many different things around your home. It's really amazing to know that I just have to call one number, and I am taken care of because they can handle the plumbing. They can handle the electrical. They can handle the small appliance install. They can handle small appliance repair. And of course, they specialize in your HVAC system. As you look towards the weekend and towards the future, we're going to have some cold weather coming. It won't be long, so go and make sure you are well positioned for the cold months ahead by getting a system checkup from Polar Bear Services. Take the opportunity now to remember, if you have a problem with your heat or air or plumbing or electrical, just pick up the phone and call the Bear. It's 205-497-BEAR. It's 497-BEAR. We welcome him in now. He's Jake Rowe. You can follow him on X at Jake M. Rowe. He is the senior editor, co-owner of Dogs HQ, which is the On3 show, or the On3 network version of covering the Georgia Bulldogs. Jake, we really, really appreciate the time, my friend. How are you this morning?
I'm good, man. And Greg, let me tell you, we've talked a few times, done a few radio interviews. I want to let you know, man, I think you guys are doing a fantastic job, you and Sean, this year. Watched a few of y'all's games. It's been really good, man. You guys are doing awesome.
Oh, I appreciate it, buddy. We've had 3 Georgia games, hoping to have some more. It's a fun team to cover. You know what I mean? They're just I'm excited when I get a chance to see the Dogs up close. If
you say so.
Well, they're puzzling. That's what I think. That's what I think's kind of fun about them is they're a little bit unpredictable. You know what I mean? It's
man. Yeah, no doubt about
wild.
it. And for fans that won 2 national championships and probably one of the best teams in the country last year, they didn't earn it. There's just high expectations, and the expectation is you come out firing and you put it on everybody you play. And they're not that team, and nobody seems to be that team. And that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to see the ebbs and flows in performance, but it's not that surprising. That's kind of across the board. So we'll talk a little bit about this. They're coming off the bye week. The last time we saw them, they were like gangbusters. I mean, it was unbelievable. Their best performance defensively, maybe in 2 seasons, with how they were able to just completely destroy the line of scrimmage against the Texas Longhorns. So is that a sign of things to come, or is that kind of the anomaly performance because Texas's offensive line went on to struggle against Vanderbilt the following week? So I started making me think, like, hang on a second, maybe this Texas O-line's not very good. So what do you think about the defensive approach and the ramped up pressure?
Well, Greg, I feel like you probably played with some guys like this in your career. That one guy, whether it's offensive lineman, defensive lineman, if he didn't want to get beat, he wasn't getting beaten. That's the way it was. And it seems like Georgia, and it's frustrating for that guy. It's frustrating to play with that guy, to coach that guy. And Georgia's kind of that team in a way. It's kind of like when it's buttons, when it's blood's hot and it's focused and it's ready to roll. And I thought Todd McShay made a really good point about this in an interview I heard him talk about, where he said, that disrespect card that Kirby played there for 2 weeks was paid off on the practice field, and they focused. And Georgia, when they get into these big games, you look at Georgia's biggest games, they do that. They get after the quarterback. I mean, Clemson, 10 tackles for a loss, 3 sacks, 4 sacks, something like that. I mean, you go back and look at big games over the year, and playoffs in 2022. Georgia had 4 or 5 sacks a game there. I don't know why it is this way, and it seems to be so successful when they get aggressive and they force the issue like this. It's the same way on the offensive side of the ball in a lot of ways. They are really successful when they do it, but I think Kirby sometimes just has the stomach for, all right, I think we can win, and we can win big this way, but I know we can win, and it may not look pretty this other way. And sometimes I think he has the stomach for that, and he just kind of goes with it. But it's tough to know what to expect from this team week in and week out, even this defense that is, incredibly talented. Greg, I will say one thing, though. Mykel Williams, the Clemson game and the Texas game are the 2 healthiest games he's played this year. It's no mistake. It's no coincidence to me that Jalen Walker has all of his sacks and all of his tackles for loss in the games where Mykel Williams has played at least 20 snaps. And Mykel Williams has been impactful in those games. I think that is also a major, major contributing factor.
There's no doubt Mykel Williams is a game changer, and him now looking closer to 100% off the high ankle sprain is super encouraging. Got to feel like his best football's in front of him as we visit with Jake Rowe of Dogs HQ. You can check him out at Jake M. Rowe on X. Jake, when you look at the offense, so much has been made of Carson Beck and how he's not cutting it loose and how he's, missed throws and his inaccuracies are highlighted this year, and he doesn't have the safety blanket. And I do think the bye week is going to be the best thing ever for him to just allow him to calm down a little bit. Like, let's stop worrying about the draft prospects. Let's stop trying to win a championship on a week-to-week basis. Like, let's just take a step back and get back to doing the fundamentals. Is there reason to believe that there's significant growth to be had at quarterback, and could it come this week?
There's absolutely significant growth that could happen at quarterback. And going through those first, 3, maybe even 3.5 games, taking the first half of that Alabama game, I had that same criticism like, man, Carson's got to turn it loose. There against Kentucky, I can't remember if you guys had that game or not, but, looking at that game, there were dig routes and quick, posts and slants that he turned down to check the ball.
Yes.
Down. And I thought, to me, that was like, hey, Carson, hey, listen, you're an experienced quarterback. Got a lot of money invested in getting you to come back to school here. You need to cut it loose. And now I'm almost thinking, well, maybe they need to pull the reins back a little bit, because he has absolutely cut it loose since then and put the ball in danger. We've seen enough of Carson, in my opinion. I think I counted the other day, 17 out of 21 starts he's turned the ball over one or fewer times, that he can take care of the ball. And I think the bye week can be big for him too. Last year it coincided with a very big jump in 2 areas. One was turning the ball over. He came into the bye week, turned it over 4 or 5 times in 3 games. And then 2, the pass attempts went down. He was 36, 37 a game, 35, 36 a game going into the bye week last year, and it's the same spot that it's in right now. He came out of that throwing around 30, 31 times a game. They took a little bit of the game off of his shoulders, and it seemed to pay off. I mean, he had less 300-yard games and things of that nature, but Georgia's offense really started to pick it up. I think that coincided a little bit with Kendall Milton and Dacian Edwards getting fully healthy. Maybe that's what Georgia needs to kind of find this balance and to take some of it off of him, because throwing the ball 40 times a game is just not conducive to what Georgia wants to do offensively, defensively, or complementary-wise.
It is. Yeah, it is an interesting thing. It's probably something worth going back to look at. I probably will do that after the show or after the interview. Just look at what the numbers looked like before the bye week as compared to after the bye week, because if there was a significant difference in trend, that could certainly pay dividends this week. I know you haven't studied Florida like crazy, but they are your rival, and they are a team that has improved. And whether you think that they are capable of knocking off Georgia is one thing, but have you from a distance noticed a difference in how Florida's performed the last couple of weeks against Tennessee, and then last week in what I thought was probably the performance of the year for them when running the football the way they ran it against Kentucky?
I wouldn't dare try to tell a Florida fan how to feel or anything like that, but I thought early in the season that team was going to quit on Billy Napier. Like I thought, the way they lost to Texas A&M, I really thought they had quit in that Texas A&M game. I think they came back with a late score or something like that. Maybe that was something for that team. I don't know, but they certainly have not quit. They're playing better defensively, even though they're still not great. I love DJ Lagway, and I think DJ Lagway is a problem for Georgia. And I don't necessarily think he absolutely will be. I think he could be. And the reason I say that is because he's mobile. Not only is he mobile, but he's big and he's strong, so he's kind of hard to get on the ground. And then he's very accurate down the field. And if you wanted me to put 3 qualities of a quarterback that would give Georgia trouble, it's those 3 things. It's being tough to tackle, it's being able to hurt Georgia with your legs, and it's being able to be accurate down the football field. And those Georgia has struggled with. It's done well with guys like Hendon Hooker and some other guys, even Anthony Richardson to an extent. But DJ Lagway, to me, is just a little bit of a different story, and he's as with all of these young quarterbacks that we're seeing come into college football and kind of struggle to get it going, DJ Lagway's as advertised. And I think that is kind of the straw that stirs the drink. If he plays really well in Jacksonville, Georgia's going to have a fight on its hands. But if Georgia's able to get the better of them, I think it's one of those games where it can kind of move on from Florida. But there's no doubt about it. Whether they're hitting layups or short jumpers or not, sometimes you need a few of those to get hot so you can hit a three, and that's what it's going to try to do against Georgia.
Well, the thing that jumped out to me against about Georgia earlier in the season, having called their game against Clemson, Kentucky, and then seeing them in person against Alabama, and then seeing them again calling the game against Auburn. So seeing them 4 times, calling the game 3 times. The area that I am not convinced is elite is the secondary. And I know that maybe things have looked a little bit better in the Texas games, probably a good example, but I think that game was won by the pass rush. I think most people acknowledge that game was won by the pass rush. So in the event in which they are blocked, can this secondary cover down and not give up the big play? Is that something that concerns you?
No, yeah, absolutely. And it's been my concern since the offseason because they lost 3 guys in that secondary. But they didn't lose. Not one of them was this athletic freak that was going to get drafted to play in the NFL because he has, these incredible traits that somebody's going to develop. They lost 3 football playing Jessies, like I'm talking about Kamari Lassiter, Javon Bullard, and Tyke Smith. All 3 guys starting on Sunday, year 1. I mean, and none of them were first-round picks. That's what type of guys Georgia missed. So you're missing a lot of playmaking. Tyke Smith led Georgia in interceptions and tackles for loss last year. So they lost some dudes there that were so reliable, so physical, tone setters. They don't have them anymore. And so they're breaking in some guys. And to me, they have more of those kind of freak athletes that are taking a little bit longer to develop. Julian Humphrey's one of the fastest players, on the team. And Dalen Everett's a freak show player who's starting to kind of feel like they're starting to figure out how to use him better and better. He's a much different corner when he can put his eyes on the quarterback and play some zone. But I think that's definitely a concern. And then when you consider the fact that they're going to miss Jonel Aguero and Dan Jackson from everything we know in the first half of that game because of targeting penalties against Texas, that was a big issue. But Texas wasn't – I totally agree with you. I went into that Texas game thinking the same thing. Texas wasn't ever going to challenge them because Texas runs 70% of its offense in front of 10 yards anyway, is pass offense. So it's – they weren't the team to challenge Georgia. It's why I love the matchup and picked Georgia to win that game. But I do think Florida can absolutely get after Georgia in that area, and they got to play the ball in the air better if they want to limit big plays.
Last one here as we visit with Jake Rowe. Does a great job for Dogs HQ. You can go to Dogs HQ. It's really a great site. All the On3 is really well done. Y'all's in particular, really enjoy it. But anyways, looking at just any aspect of this matchup that concerns you, outside of what we've already addressed, anything that nobody's really talking about that we should be when assessing the world's largest outdoor cocktail party?
I think it's from an offensive standpoint, I think Georgia's got to have some balance. I don't again, I know we kind of mentioned it. I grazed it a little while ago, but this whole, super pass heavy stuff. I know Georgia's been dealing with some injuries on the offensive line. Missing 2 starters, but I think they're also got some guys that are playing at far less than 100%. Maybe the bye week has really helped with that. But they've got to try and find some balance in this offense to set up play action. Carson Beck's much more comfortable, and he's much more explosive in play action. Most quarterbacks are. And Georgia's just not getting that set up. And there's been a lack of commitment to the run, which is very bizarre for Mike Bobo, which to me seems to lean credence to the fact that there's some distrust in the health of the offensive line right now. So they've got to find some balance because whether DJ Lagway gets it going or not, the offense, this game's going to be tight and Georgia's going to be bad offensively, in my opinion, if it doesn't find some balance in a game like this. And so I just don't think that they're going to go in there and throw it 30 times in the first half and be where they want to be.
How much, where is Frazier gone? Like the last game that we did was the Auburn game. And I flat out asked Kirby, I'm like, look, we did the Clemson game and Nate Frazier was the best player on the field. I know ETN was out that game or whatnot, so it opened the door for him. And I'm not saying the guys in front of him are not good players, but Frazier's a game breaker potentially at running back. I know he can't protect, but who cares? Find a place for him to get the ball on a screen or something. Like, why is he not a factor at all?
I think, and this is a hot debate over at the dog walk, Greg, the big one. I think if pass protection were the only issue, that would be it. But Nate's had some trouble holding on to the football in practice, and fans want to say, well, no, that's not enough reason to keep a guy off the field. And I understand where they're coming from, but I coached a little high school ball before I got into this business and taught some high school. And man, when a guy's putting it on the ground in practice, it is really tough to play him. It's like trying to drown yourself. It's almost impossible. And so it's really tough. And so I think he's earning some trust back, and he's definitely getting himself in the game. And I thought in that Mississippi State game, when Mississippi State was trying to, was scoring late and kept bringing it to a 2-score game, and Georgia kind of kept, trying to push away, they handed the football to him in the fourth quarter of that game. And I really thought that meant, okay, well, he's going to get back into it. They didn't run the ball much at all. He did play double-digit snaps against Texas. I would think that if he had a couple good weeks here during the bye taking care of the football, that he'll be a bigger part of the game playing against Florida.
I think it's hilarious that people on your message board say, oh, fumbling in practice is not a big deal. I can live with lapses in protection. I cannot live with fumbles. I'm not sure what they're thinking over there, but that's nuts. Tell them to get back to the basics. We can't put the ball on the deck. All right. Hey, Jake, great stuff, man. Really, really enjoyed the visit. Look forward to seeing you. I think we could very well be doing the Dogs game next week. So maybe we'll see you in Oxford. So fingers crossed. Right, we'll see.
Take care, Greg.
All right. See you later. Jake Rowe, Jake M. Rowe on X. You can check out Dogs HQ on the On3. By the way, I've found more and more. I don't know about you guys. Like, I'm not like huge on recruiting. I just have a hard time following it. It's just a lot. It's a lot of information, a lot of players. It's like, I'll just cover them when they get there. But I've found more and more that the coverage on some of these sites, on On3, like the specific sites for your team, in this case, Dogs HQ for Georgia. I'm not sure what Bama's one is. I can't recall off the top of my head. But, the Bama Onlines of the world, the Tiger Walks of the world, whatever they are, the team-specific sites on 247, Rivals, On3, they're really good. A lot of the stuff I hear off the record pops up on some of these sites from time to time. So just something to think about. Not saying you need to go subscribe to all of them and have 15 different subscriptions to your fan sites, but the information is pretty high quality. So really appreciate the time that Jake was able to spend with us and look forward to future visits. That one, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, will be at 2:30 this weekend. Georgia, a comfortable favorite, but I would not be messing around with Florida right now. Just saying, I think Florida's going to hang in there in that game. I do. And I think they could weather the storm. And if your basement can't weather the storm, you need to call our friends at B-Dry. B-Dry is the largest waterproofing company in the country, and they're the only company with a solution that stops all 5 ways water can enter your foundation. Call B-Dry now to get the job done right. You also are going to get the strongest lifetime warranty in the business. That means you're going to get that thing taken care of with 60 plus years of experience. And as long as B-Dry's in business, they'll come out and they'll fix it if there's an issue, and they're going to give you 12 months interest-free and no payments. That's right, 12 months interest-free, no payments. So you get the job done, and you still have some cash on hand for some end-of-the-year fun. So call them today at 942-1976, or you can visit bdryalabama.com. All right, when we come back, I'm going to tell you why you think the 12-team playoff is going to allow a lot of access. I'm going to tell you why you're wrong and just how dangerous a game some teams might be playing down the stretch. It's next on McElroy and Cubelic in the Morning, Jock 94.5. Jocks 94.5. Jocks 94.5 here, October 30th. Day before Halloween. Slowing it down right here. Like that. Mellow. Our kids are super into like spooky things right now. I mean, very into things that are like kind of scary. And sure enough, Vince, middle of the night last night, bad dream, into mom and dad's bed. Golly, I'm done with spookiness. And honestly, even if you look at our smiling pumpkin or jack-o'-lantern out in the front of the house, even that looks a little spooky. It's smiling, and yet it looks like
It's got fangs, probably.
no. It's like it looks like a mischievous smile, like
Okay.
something's
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Like it's smiling, but it's actually really horrible. It's I don't know. It's a little. We're down the spooky rabbit hole with our 5 and 3-year-old, and I'm a little concerned about it. But we'll be all right. We'll pull them out.
I mean, 48 hours.
We'll pull them out.
Ain't that much longer.
We'll go to church on Sunday, and we'll be back. We'll be back
Exercise
in
the
good shape.
demons. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. One thing that you never have to worry about are issues when you are making a move by calling Crocker Moving Services. They're a local company owned by an Iraq War veteran, Eric Crocker. Crocker believes in hiring movers you can trust to complete full background checks and run drug tests on every single employee. These are good guys, and you can trust them in your home, whether you need your whole home packed up, move your company headquarters, move across country, or you just wanted to come rearrange your living room. These guys got you covered. They also do deliveries for furniture that you purchase need to get to your homes. Call, visit them online today for a free quote. The website is crockermovingservices.com. It's crockermovingservices.com. Support your veterans by choosing Crocker Moving Services for your next move. By a show of hands, which I know doesn't work very well for radio, but I don't care. We'll describe what we see. It's Damian, Saber, and myself, Greg. By a show of hands, how many of y'all thought that 12 teams would be too much? I'm raising my hand.
Yeah.
Y'all two are
I'm
not?
up, yeah.
No, I'm not.
All right.
They're in the
so
air
Saber's
and
up.
do not care. Yes.
All right. So Saber's up. I'm up. I 100% believed going into the season that 12 teams would be too many. We're going to be measuring flawed teams. We're going to be measuring teams that aren't good. Like, why are we trying to figure out a way to allow for fill in the blank university a chance to chase a title? Like, they're going to get steamrolled in the first round of the playoff. And then here we are in year number 1 of the 12-team playoff, guys. And I'm telling you, there are not enough spots.
No.
I'm just telling you right now, there are going to be really, really difficult decisions for the committee when looking at teams 9, 10, 11. And then, frankly, 13, 14, 15, 16. Because we're going to be getting to a spot here. I'm going to tell you flat out right now, I'm taking Penn State to win the game this weekend.
Oh, all
right.
Okay.
All right. I'm just telling you right now, that's where I'm leaning. Okay. I don't trust Ohio State. I think they got problems along the offensive line. I think their defensive line has a hard time creating pressure. I think they're great against the run. But Andy Kotelnick, he came from Kansas, and Andy Kotelnick, he had to do a lot with a little for a long time. And I think he's going to position them to be successful this weekend. So I think Penn State is going to win this weekend, which means Ohio State now falls to 10-2 at best. And that's the possibility of Ohio State beating Indiana and Michigan down the stretch, which is not a guarantee, right? But they're going to be a comfortable favorite against Michigan, probably around 17 points. And against Indiana, they're about a 10-point favorite right now at Indiana. Or no, it's in Columbus. About a 10-point favorite right now. So they're going to have a good win at their disposal. Okay, so you're going to have Ohio State that joins the group of 10-2 football teams. Still on that list could very easily be Georgia. Georgia plays at Ole Miss. You know what that line is right now? Look ahead.
Georgia 4.5.
Between 3.5 and 5.
Wow.
Ooh.
So well done. Look at you. How sick is Saber? So they're about a 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5, 6.5 even. Who cares? They're inside a touchdown favorite at Ole Miss. Do you know that they're around a 7-point favorite at home against Tennessee? The possibility of Georgia losing one of those two games is very real. I mean, it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that chalk flies and Georgia just wins out and they're cooking with gas. So Georgia could find their way to the 2-loss contingent very easily. Tennessee, let's say they lose to Georgia. Now they're in the 2-loss contingent. Okay? Noticing a trend here? What about Clemson? Clemson runs the table the rest of the way. They're a healthy favorite against Virginia Tech and Pitt and South Carolina. Healthy favorite against those teams, all around 7 points. So it's not like it's not a guarantee they get there. But let's say Clemson loses a game in the regular season to, say, South Carolina in the season finale. And they're sitting there at 10-2. Let's say Indiana, who nobody really respects in this part of the country, but I'm telling you need to. They're really good. Let's say their only loss is to Ohio State. They're a double-digit favorite against Michigan. They're a double-digit favorite against Michigan State. And they're just a massive favorite against Purdue in the final week of the season. So let's say their only loss is to Ohio State. Now you have a one-loss Indiana team with no good wins, but they're 11-1. All right. Continuing the trend here. A&M. A&M is on the road at South Carolina this week. They're on the road at Auburn. They're between they're a 2.5-point favorite this week on the road. They're about a 5-point favorite at Auburn. And they're about a 7-point dog to Texas. Let's say A&M loses one of those three, which I think is highly likely. Same page?
Yeah.
Well,
especially if they go around and beat Texas a couple weeks later. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you're picking up what I'm putting down.
Mm-hmm.
A&M, they lose one of the next three. Guess what? They're now in the 10-2 bunch. Against a Notre Dame team that beat them head-to-head, who's probably going to be 11-1. They're a heavy favorite in every game, except for their road trip to SC, where they're a 4-point favorite, but they match up well against SC. All right, Alabama, we know where they're at. They're currently 2-loss team, and they're a favorite against LSU right now, and they're a massive favorite against the rest of the teams on their schedule. They get LSU, they're 10-2. Pitt has 2 games against ranked teams coming up. At SMU and Clemson comes to them. So Pitt, they lose both those games. They're 10-2. LSU, 2 losses right now. But they beat Bama. They're in the mix. Are you picking up what I'm putting down right now? Are you picking it up? How about Ole Miss? Ole Miss beats Georgia here in a week. They have 2 losses. Those 2 losses are by a combined 6 points. Let's say they beat Arkansas this week. They beat Georgia. They win at Florida. They're a heavy favorite in the Egg Bowl. They're 10-2. Y'all, that's what? 10 or 11 different teams that I just gave you that are 10-2? I'm not even including Boise State, who already is going to occupy a playoff spot, or whatever G5 team makes it. I'm not even talking about the conference champions. I didn't even mention Texas, because I'm just assuming Texas can just go and win the conference title or whatever. But if they lost at A&M, that's 2 losses for them. 2 losses for Georgia if they lose one of their big 2 games. 2 losses for Bama already. 2 losses for Ole Miss if they beat Georgia. Y'all, I'm telling you, we are cruising towards a really interesting dilemma where we could be evaluating a team like Clemson that is 11-1 in the regular season, loses to Miami in the conference championship, so they're 11-2, against a 10-2 Alabama, or a 10-2 Georgia, or a 10-2 Ohio State, or a 10-2 Texas. We are looking at a scenario where Miami is 12-0 in the regular season, loses to Clemson in the ACC championship game, and now you have a 12-1 Miami whose best win is against Florida, or 6-6 Louisville, or 7-5 Virginia Tech. And they're being measured at 12-1 against teams that didn't play in conference championship games, but have much stronger wins on their resume. Y'all, we have a disaster that is imminent. Now, it's going to require quite a few upsets. It's going to require quite a few interesting conversations. But people in this part of the country, I'm telling you this, and I told you this last year. I'm telling you, last year, things worked out in the SEC's favor. But I don't know for sure if that's always going to be the case. because this year you could have an 11-1 Indiana with very little historical brand significance, with a win over Michigan and their next best win is over a 7-5 Nebraska team. You're going to have an 11-1 Indiana potentially being measured against a 10-2 Alabama, or a 10-2 Georgia, or a 10-2 Texas. Think about that and be prepared for it.
You didn't even include the Big 12, which in theory could have 11-1 or two 12-1s and an 11-1 when it's all said and done.
I'm just banking on chaos in that league.
Correct.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Right.
I cannot envision. Now, their only chance at an at-large, in my opinion, in the Big 12 is BYU. That's their only chance at an at-large. And the only way BYU gets in as an at-large is if SMU, who they beat in the non-conference, runs the table and finishes the season like 11-1. Because then SMU is sitting there at 11-1 as a potential at-large, but BYU has the head-to-head. And then everybody's going to be freaking out because everybody in this part of the country has a strong disdain for Notre Dame. And they're going to look at Notre Dame's schedule and they're going to say, goodness gracious alive. They beat A&M, but maybe A&M is in the mix, right? A&M's clearly an excellent win for the Irish. And I think that might be all they need. But people are going to have a real hard time when the loser of the SEC championship game or the loser of the ACC championship game, the team that had to play the extra game, is being left out in favor of a team that didn't have to play in a conference title scenario. That is going to blow people's mind. Get ready. Because when you're measuring a 11-1 regular season Clemson against an 11-1 regular season Notre Dame, Clemson's loss comes to Georgia. Notre Dame's loss comes against NIU. But Notre Dame's win is against A&M, who might very well be ranked in the top 10. And then Clemson's best win is, I don't know, at 8-4 Virginia Tech. It's going to be crazy because Clemson's going to have that second loss, but it's only because they had to try when Notre Dame got to sit and chill on Championship Saturday. I'm just telling you, get ready. It's going to be insane. 12 does not, this year especially with so many unknowns, 12 is going to lead to far more increased debate and far more vitriol because people think, oh, 12, there's plenty of room for us. We can screw up a couple times. We're golden. All right, screw up and find out, Georgia. Get ready. I'm just telling you, you don't want to play that game right now. The game that you do want to play is finding the best deal at Bill Smith Buick GMC. That's a great game. I'm just going to tell you, it's a pretty easy game to play, by the way. If you're looking for other GMC dealers, you're not going to get it beat if you go to Bill Smith. GMC Sierra 1500 SLT, more than $13,000 off the sticker. It's deals like that keep people coming back. That's why 75% of their business is repeat customers. Because they're not here downtown, in town, they can charge less. Their overhead is less. Their inventory is more. So therefore, they can sell at deals that no one around here can sell at. So go and check them out off I-65, exit 310, Highway 31 in Coleman. Go find Andy Cole. Go find Jonathan Yeager. Go see the 7-time national champ, the dealer of the year, Bill Smith Buick GMC. You can also shop online at BillSmithBuickGMC.com. All right, when we come back, top three, Damian Mitchell next on Mac and Cube in the morning.
You weren't lying.
That's it? I can't even fit a read in here.
No, man, that you kept going.
Wow.
Hey, but I will say my top 3 because I didn't get a chance to do my overrated candies. Twizzlers,
Yeah.
Nerds, and Smarties.
There you go. Because that's what I was waiting for. And I honestly feel like Nerds is a great answer.
Oh, I just think they're terrible.
They're awful. I don't know how many people like them. I do like the Nerd Ropes, though.
The Nerd Ropes?
Yeah, some of their variety, like the variations off the Nerds, like the standard like little boxes of Nerds, terrible. But the other ones aren't terrible. Nerd Rope, you've never had it?
Don't think I have.
Well, I thought it was a good top 3 today. Most overrated candies. Maybe tomorrow we'll do most underrated candies. And we'll really rip. Ben Hartsock, break down Ohio State, Penn State next. Welcome back, McElroy, Cubelic in the morning, Jack 94.5. Holiday season here is quickly approaching. It's Halloween. I don't know if you and your significant other exchange gifts on Halloween. That might be a little odd, but if they do, you can go check out our friends at Bromberg's. They might have some type of strange trinket for you if you are into the Halloween festivities. I kind of doubt it, but you ought to go in there anyways. The deals that they have are awesome. The sales staff is incredible. They're going to give you that one-of-a-kind experience. When you walk in the door, they're going to really help you make important decisions. I mean, in some cases, these purchases that you're making in that store are going to live in your family for multiple generations. So go and check out the oldest firm in the state, the oldest family-owned and operated retailer in the country. Opened their doors in 1836 by going to see them in Mountain Brook Village or the Summit. You can always shop online at brombergs.com. Ben Hartsock joins us now, and Ben does a great job. Hear him all over the place on SiriusXM, and has really just turned into just an outstanding broadcaster. Ben, we appreciate the time, my friend. How are you this morning?
Appreciate it, man. Good to hear from you. I got my first ever Halloween greeting card. Like Christmas cards, I think, are a thing. I had a friend of ours, actually a buddy of ours that used to be a producer at Sirius when you were working at Sirius. He's now moved on. I got a Halloween card wishing me a happy Halloween, which is a new first. It was, I enjoyed it, but it was just unexpected.
I'm creeped out by that. I don't know how I feel. I don't need to like some pagan worship or something like Halloween voodoo. You know, I mean, that freaks me out, but I dig it. Like, hey, to each his own. And I just would prefer to have holiday cards, regardless of the circumstances. Birth announcements are also totally acceptable. Good with that as well. But Halloween card, that one, that's a new one. Big one this weekend, Benny. And I got to be honest, man, I've never felt better about Penn State going into this matchup. And it's not so much about what Penn State is, it's more about what Ohio State isn't. And it's the line of scrimmage that has me super concerned. And is this something that can get figured out overnight with the problems they had on offensive line last week?
So here's what I can report. I don't share this opinion, but this is what people I know, people I trust are saying about Ohio State right now. That game last week versus Nebraska was lifeless. Guys that I wasn't there. I live in Georgia, so I watch from a distance. But guys that were there, former teammates of mine, group chats that I'm on, there was some buzz about the sideline looks lifeless, guys. It looked dead. The environment was breathless. But here's the deal. So there's a lot of people saying it's not working. It's not working. Well, this is what happens when you have the roster that we have. We've got this $20 million roster, and you know this, Greg. With great investment comes great responsibility and great pressure. And that's what I see this Ohio State team wrestling with is the pressure of, we know that they're good every year. We know that they recruit at a high level every year. We know that they're in the hunt every year. Now you have to live up to the additional pressure of this is the most expensive roster ever put together in the era of pay for play in college athletics. And so I see that if I'm going to say that there is an issue, that would be my read on what's causing it. The line of scrimmage thing for me, we were talking with Dan Hope, a guy that covers the team there local yesterday with me and Roddy on SiriusXM, and he perfectly personified the unreasonable expectations we have. Their line of scrimmage, did it look great against Nebraska? No. Now, there's been some injuries. I'm not an injury guy, excuse for offensive line. Everybody's got attrition on the offensive line, and yes. Ohio State should be as equipped as anybody to be able to deal with that. They lost their starting left tackle, Simmons. They lost his backup last week. I don't care. That doesn't matter. Fill them in with the next 5-star. But Ohio State is still top 5 in the Big Ten in rushing. Like this hasn't been a season-long problem. It was a last week problem. And I think we looked at Nebraska, and we look at it in the vacuum of the shellacking they took 2 weeks ago against Indiana. Nebraska is a top 5 defense, especially on that defensive front. So Ohio State's offensive line went up against a challenging opponent in Nebraska, a better team than I think many will give them credit for. I don't look at Ohio State offensively and say or at the line of scrimmage and say there's giant problems. I think that on the offensive line, we've had some injury, and ultimately we had one bad game, 60 yards rushing. I get it, but outside of that, they're top 5 in the Big Ten in rushing. Defensive line, it's a little more nuanced. We at Ohio State have unreasonable expectations for what our defensive line is. And when we were talking to Dan Hope yesterday, I said, Dan, don't you think this team is better than what we're giving credit for? He said, yeah, but it's not quite what we thought it would be. And then he just kind of out of pocket said, they're top 10 in college football in every statistical category, but And that's where I stopped them. It's like, wait, no, like they're top 10 in every statistical category. Full stop. This is not a team that is on its last gasp of air. This is a team that took Oregon, the number one team in the country, to the wire. Last week was not their best performance, and I understand the apprehension that comes with that because we all know Ohio State's already taken its mulligan with the Oregon loss, and you're facing an incredibly talented team in Penn State. But Penn State isn't Oregon, and you were a fraction of a play, a fraction of a second from being able to beat Oregon.
Yeah, the Oregon game feels like forever ago, though, which I know is we need to be careful with all the bye weeks now, and you might get a different team before the bye week to after the bye week. And last week, I think it would have been easy to look at Ohio State's preparation and say, well, this Nebraska team just got blown out by Indiana. We'll handle them. I mean, I know how kids think. I've been in those shoes before. I get it.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm not.
And to build upon that, Greg, too, like Ohio State went on a run. Like the Ohio State fans, this is kind of I know these people. They speak this. Urban Meyer would have never allowed this lethargy at this defensive line. This defensive line doesn't have it. Well, they haven't gotten a bunch of sacks, and I recognize Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau. They're not top 15 picks. They might be first-round picks. They might be second-round picks. They're still really good all-conference caliber football players. But we had a 7-year run at Ohio State that went from Joey Bosa to Nick Bosa to Chase Young. And that was about a step. That was the majority of the Urban Meyer era. You had we had 3 straight generational defensive linemen at the Ohio State defensive front. And so the expectation is we'll just keep doing that. This defense is not that, but this is an NFL-laden defensive unit on the D-line, at the secondary, and even in the linebacker room as well.
When you look at the run game, though, what I'm trying to figure out, like, I think they're good on defense. I'm not worried about the defense. I think they'll be all right. I would like to see. I think their secondary is a concern, if you want to be honest. I think that if Nebraska had tried anything other than like screens, maybe they would have a chance. I mean, it's one of the most puzzling offensive performances I think I've seen in a while from Nebraska as far as their play calling is concerned. But I'm worried about their ability to run the ball because I love Will Howard. I think Will Howard's very underrated. I think he's a good player. He's not C.J. Stroud. So they're going to need to take some of the pressure off him. If they can't run the football against some of the teams they're going to face down the stretch, they're going to be in for some challenging games, like Michigan, frankly, which is as crazy as that sounds. If they can't run the ball, it's going to be tricky. Indiana, got to run the ball. This week, got to run the ball. Can they run it when they need to?
Yeah, I mean, yes. But, I mean, Greg, you do this as well as anybody in college football. That's just about every game plan of every game, regardless of who's being played, is you have to make them play left-handed. You're not going to drop 8 against Ohio State, so you're not going to try to slow down the wide receivers. Yeah, you got to stack the box, and you got to slow down that run again. And Nebraska did a good job of it. And Nebraska's got some dudes on that D line, and they schemed a good game. And it's kind of like everything they dialed up landed. And credit to them, like they landed. I don't expect that to be I don't see that as a systemic flaw of this team throughout the entirety of the season. And the reality, if you just go back to the basics of it, Judkins and Henderson, the 2 running backs, are NFL guys. They're all conference, all American caliber guys. So they're there. And Chip Kelly is gonna figure it out. This is not a high school Pop Warner coach that they pulled off the street. They're going to figure this out, and they're going to be fine against Penn State. Now, but I will say, Penn State's defense, they're the real deal. Manny Diaz built that team into what it is. He's now leading Duke, and Tom Allen comes over to replace him as the former head coach at Indiana, now the D coordinator, and he's got those guys going. They've got Abdul Carter is doing good things. Jalen Reed at the secondary last week. And take a quick peek at Penn State last week. Penn State's probably, well, it doesn't matter who starts. Ohio State is going to spend this entire week defensively putting together 2 game plans, the Drew Aller game plan and the Bo Prabula game plan. So Aller could be 100% healthy, but we're not going to know. So Ohio State's defensive workload is doubled because you're going to have to plan for two guys. Prabula is more of an athletic guy. Aller is more of a pocket. So they're going to have to stretch themselves there. But outside of Aller's injury in the Wisconsin game last week, a game that needed their backup goes in Penn State, and they needed a pick six in the second half to open up that game for Wisconsin. I don't feel like we're looking at Penn State with the same critical eye that Ohio State is facing right now.
Probably not. But I don't have expectations for Penn State. I think they are working. They're working in the land of, well, if they lose to Ohio State, it's all the same. But if Ohio State loses to Penn State, oh my goodness, the world is upside down. As we visit with Ben Hartsock, does a great job, former Buckeye, helping us preview what I think is the game of the weekend in college football. The receivers are as advertised. We know that. The defense, we've already kind of hit that. The secondary, was the Oregon performance an anomaly performance, or is that who they are?
Well, it wasn't a good day for Denzel Burke, I'll tell you that. The guy that was the keystone, the crown jewel of the not getting these guys paid so they come back for one more year. Now, he wanted to come back for one more year to play and win and all those things, but he also wanted to improve his draft stock. At points during his career, Denzel Burke has looked first-round talent, and there's been times where he looked like the guy we saw against Oregon a couple weeks ago. And some of that is his fault, but some of it is that lack of pass rush. Remember, it was the Oregon game where that spurred Saban to say the pass rush looked antiquated. And I'm reminded of the coach that said it, that 85% of pass coverage is pass rush. And right now, that game specifically was a little disjointed, that you give Dylan Gabriel, who's a known accurate passer, you don't even give him a ton of time. You just give him the normal amount of time, and he'll pluck you apart, and that's what happened in that game. That's a Jekyll or Hyde thing. Like, that's why Ohio State fans are so apprehensive, is a couple different points this season we've seen warts. And I think we've seen that across college football in general with all these teams that have losses. They've looked human at times, and it's not the expectation. But in all of the narratives of this year, Ohio State stands alone because they're the ones that are themselves advertising this is a $20 million roster.
Yeah, well, who cares what you pay? The New York Mets haven't won a championship, and they have the highest payroll. It just doesn't matter. It's about how you perform, and we'll find out this weekend. In the event in which Ohio State comes up short, what's the reaction around Ryan Day and the program?
In the game where there was the questionable targeting call, I don't know if you saw it after the fact. I mean, he lost his ever-loving mind. Ryan Day is having no fun. Is as well compensated. You're leading the one of the most prestigious programs in college football history. It looks absolutely zero fun, and I think that pours over to what I said earlier in the interview here is that sideline is lifeless because this team is heavy as the crown. You're an Alabama guy. A couple of years ago, that was my read on the Alabama team. It was one of the Georgia back-to-back national championship years. That team looked fatigued. And I've heard it said this way: getting to the top of the mountain is passion. Staying at the top of the mountain is fatigue. And Ohio State looks fatigued. And so if Ryan Day loses that game, and now you're 2 losses in, your life isn't like there's still hope, but you're placing your expectations or your future in the hands of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, which we know can be persnickety, and it also puts all of the marbles on the game at the end of the year against Michigan. I know Michigan's down, but that's a rivalry game, and that will be massive. But even with a win over Michigan, but a loss to Penn State, Ohio State's got 2 losses, most likely won't be in the Big Ten championship, and then you've got your hands, you're at the mercy of the playoff committee, and a loss to Penn State is break the glass, full panic mode. A win over Michigan softens it, but if that win doesn't lead to a playoff appearance, my goodness, it's not hot seat. That's foolish. Every time somebody brings hot seat up for Ryan Day, I'm saying, who are you getting? Give me. Now, I guess Kurt Signetti's injecting himself into the chat, which that's another game on the horizon for Ohio State that needs to be discussed. The Indiana game, I gave my tickets to my sister for that one before the season started, thinking it was a throwaway. That was a joke. So, Ryan Day shouldn't be in that discussion, but Ohio State fans are fickle people.
No, I have no idea what that's like. I can promise you.
Yeah.
At all. I think everyone cooler heads prevail. It's going to be all right. We'll see what happens this weekend. Maybe the Buckeyes get back on track. I expect a spirited effort, but man, they got holes. So we'll see. Fingers crossed for you, Benny. Really appreciate the time, my friend. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Yep. Always enjoy it, guys.
All right. Great stuff there from Ben Hartsock. You can always check out Ben all over the SiriusXM world. He's got really great perspective, having played in the NFL, having played tight end specifically, which I always appreciate that tight end because they're part of the run game, part of the pass game. They're just asked to do an awful lot, so they see it really well. That's why Greg Olson's great on games. That's why Ben's great from an evaluation standpoint. Those guys just have to know defense and offense like the back of their hand. So it's always great to get his perspective. You can check out Ben Hartsock at Ben Hartsock on Instagram. Trying to figure out where he's at on X. Yeah, at Ben Hartsock on X as well. So that is a great visit, and we look forward to that game this weekend. We'll preview it a lot tomorrow, preview it a lot on Friday, break it down every which way. I can promise you that. That is the truth. So go check them out. Another thing I want to tell you about before I get you out of here, I'm actually going to pass it off because I am going to go to this, I guess you could call it holiday.
Are you dressing up?
Boo bash. No, I was told I can wear a hat. So
That's it.
I'm cooking.
Okay. All right.
Feel great about that. So I'm going to pass it off to Damian Saber. They're going to do an amazing job before they pass it off 2-3-man front here in about 43 minutes. Up next, Wilson Alexander. Going to join the boys to kind of break down what's going on with LSU. Should be really interesting. They kind of beat up. I watched that game again yesterday. A&M. It's just there's things about what happened in that game that are just shocking. I don't really know how else to describe it, but either way, it should be fascinating to see where LSU goes from here. So look forward to our visit with Wilson here momentarily, and the boys will hold it down. Another thing I look forward to is knowing that the HVAC system is taken care of. It worked overtime this summer. It's worked overtime this fall. But we know that now in the months ahead, we need to make sure the furnace is running and that the heat is running as well. That's why Trane's Unstoppable event offers you peace of mind with a 10-year warranty on parts and labor with select Trane home comfort systems. To learn more, visit Trane.com. All right, we come back. Wilson Alexander to break down the LSU Tigers with Damian and Saber next on Mac Cube in the Morning, Jocks 94.5.
Welcome back into McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell, John Saber holding it down for the guys for a few more moments as we get you set for three-man front at the top of the hour. But we got to take a trip down to Baton Rouge and overcoming an upset, I guess you would say, for a lack of terms, from Texas A&M, the LSU Tigers, who welcome in Wilson Alexander, who covers LSU football down in Baton Rouge for the Advocate. And Wilson, we appreciate you hopping on with us this morning. And it felt like the turning point for the Texas A&M LSU game was the insertion of Marcel Reed. And it's not like LSU hadn't faced mobile quarterbacks all season long. What was the difference in what Marcel Reed was able to do for Texas A&M against that LSU defense?
LSU linebacker Greg Penn said after the game that Marcel Reed going in caught them off guard. They had not prepared for him during the week. As Brian Kelly said yesterday, you don't really set up your defense anticipating the number 2 quarterback is going to come in. Even though Marcel had started a few games this season, of course, he hadn't really played in the last 2 after Connor Wegman came back. And so that really threw LSU for a loop because, as Penn said, they thought that Connor Wegman was just going to play pretty much the whole game, but LSU was playing such good defense against him that Texas A&M kind of had to make a change. And it seemed like Texas A&M kind of, I feel like, used LSU's aggressiveness up front against it with Reed in the game. I mean, all those zone reads and what Texas A&M was doing with Marcel Reed at quarterback was just really effective, and LSU never adjusted to it. Brian Kelly said that they, have defenses, they work on it all year when you place mobile quarterbacks like him, but the execution just wasn't there. And that's something that LSU struggled with at times this season. You look back at the South Carolina game with Lenora Sellers. LSU was having trouble until he left the game with an injury. They haven't really faced another quarterback like that until Reed. Even though Jackson Dart uses his legs and some of the quarterbacks they face use their legs, this was a little bit of a different animal. And now they've got to keep really working on it over the next 2 weeks because Jalen Milroe's running ability could give this defense trouble.
Well, losing Garrett Dellinger in that game probably didn't help either. Do you have an update on him?
He has a high ankle sprain. Brian Kelly said that they hope this week becomes a recovery week for him, but it's unclear exactly how long he's going to be out. That high ankle sprain all depends on kind of the severity of it, the grade of it, and that's not something that Brian Kelly said when asked about Dellinger's status yesterday. And so, we'll see. He kind of left the door open maybe for him to come back to Alabama, but that's going to be a really tight turnaround here in 2 weeks with that kind of injury.
So with him out in that last game, and let's assume he doesn't come back. Obviously, LSU did struggle against a mobile quarterback. Do you think it was just that they didn't execute, or did A&M expose a flaw in that Tiger defense, or excuse me, in that Tiger team, especially if Garrett's not going to be there?
Yeah, if Garrett can't play, Paul Mabenga was the redshirt freshman who came in for him there at left guard, and that was Mabenga's first really significant playing time. He's only played in 5 career games, never been put into a situation like that. And, that would LSU, I feel like, it struggled in the run game. I mean, they only had 24 net rushing yards against Texas A&M. It's been an area the team's been up and down all season. Even just last week, it felt like against Arkansas, okay, hey, maybe they've turned a corner here. They had 158 yards on the ground. Maybe they found something with Caden Durham, the freshman running back. He's had a few good games here where he's kind of gotten their run game going. And then it just completely disappeared against Texas A&M. Now, Brian Kelly said that just Garrett Dellinger leaving the game wasn't the reason the run game struggled. There was a whole host of issues that contributed to that, but it wouldn't help. I mean, he's been, especially when I think LSU's statistically had the most success, according to PFF, when it's run toward that left side with him and Will Campbell. And, him being out would definitely have an effect on the offense to some degree. Somebody, Mabenga or someone else, would really have to step up.
Here with Wilson Alexander, who covers LSU for the Advocate down in Baton Rouge, and sticking to the offensive side of the ball, it feels like we get the absolute boom or bust with Garrett Nussmeier game after game, because there are moments on the field it's like, okay, he's one of the best in the conference doing it. And then there's other times he throws, he has a tendency of throwing the ball to the other team, and it kind of reared its head against Texas A&M. Why do you think there's so much inconsistency with Garrett Nussmeier's play?
Well, he's a first-time starter. I mean, this is a guy who, has been around LSU for a few years now, but, he's only started now 9 games in his career, going back to the bowl game last year. And there's just things that I think he's seeing for the first time and experiencing for the first time. I think maybe perspective on it is colored here a little bit by, having seen Joe Burrow his first year. It wasn't fantastic, didn't light the world on fire. Jaden Daniels' first year at LSU, he had been a starter for a few years going back to Arizona State. He had really struggled kind of in the deep passing game and unlocking that until his second season when he became the best deep ball thrower in the country. And so I think that probably affects our perspective on it. But, we sort of see Garrett going through some of those same kind of growing pains as a first-year starter. That's always been his tendency early in his career when he did get some playing time, was a little bit of recklessness. He always wanted to shed that gunslinger label, but he hasn't been able to yet because he still makes some of these mistakes where he tries to do too much, tries to force the football. You see moments where it really pays off for LSU when he makes those sorts of throws. You look back to the 4th and 5 touchdown to Aaron Anderson over the middle. He threw with incredible anticipation, really high-level difficulty throw, but sometimes he tries to make too many of those. And it's always a matter for him of kind of finding that balance. And here over the last couple games, I guess really against Ole Miss and against Texas A&M, he hasn't really found that balance. He came up with the heroics against Ole Miss, but he's still within those 2 games thrown 5 interceptions, and that's something that it just has to improve as they go into this last month of regular season, because he is what's going to get them as far as they can go is his arm and the passing game, because the run game just has struggled the way that it has.
Besides focusing on health, especially for someone like a Garrett Dellinger, what should LSU be focusing on during their bye week?
Well, as we already said, stopping mobile quarterbacks. Milrose rushed for 330 yards and 11 touchdowns, and he ran all over LSU's defense last year. There was a whole thing about LSU not using a spy, even though it had Harold Perkins at the time, and I think Milroe rushed for 4 touchdowns. What was it, 5? I'm struggling to remember because it was so many. And LSU is going to have to be able to really work on its principles in terms of stopping the quarterback run here over the next 2 weeks. Everything has led up to this stretch here between Ole Miss and Alabama games. There's a 4-game stretch there where LSU really felt like needed to go at least 3-1 to have a chance at making the college football playoff. And it's got a still chance here. Just now it has to beat Alabama. And so I think that's going to be the big thing because, they get to play at home in this matchup. But if they're going to be able to beat Alabama, they got to be able to shore up that part of its game, a part of that defense in particular.
And Wilson, before we get you out of here, last question, just looking at the next 4 games for LSU moving forward after this bye week, where's your confidence level in this unit that they could possibly, win out the rest of the way?
Yeah, the Texas A&M game didn't really change my confidence level too much. I guess my confidence would be it's kind of a toss-up, maybe with a slight edge that they can do it because they get Alabama at home. Because they get 3 of the next 4 at home, I'd say maybe somewhere between a 5.5 to 6 out of 10 in terms of the confidence level. This is a team that is not a dominant team, obviously. It's inconsistent at times. There's still areas of this roster where over time LSU's going to have to continue to bring in talent. But if they can get back to the way that they were playing, against Ole Miss and up until that third quarter quarterback change against Texas A&M, then they could. It's going to be hard to do that in the SEC to win 4 straight. But again, with getting Alabama, Vanderbilt, and Oklahoma at home, you got to travel on the road to Florida. That's not going to be easy. Florida seems to be playing much better with DJ Lagway at quarterback. But it's possible for this team if they can continue to actually, really sort of execute well, which they had done against Ole Miss and Arkansas.
We know the answer of them making the playoff is dependent on their schedule, but just looking at the team, just the team itself, is this team a playoff team?
It's a fringe playoff team. It's a bubble team. That I don't think that they are a definite playoff team at this point. They do some things really well, but they have some deficiencies. And if they can just sort of maximize what they do well, like in the passing game and make the running game a complement and continue to bring a ton of pressure defensively, then they could be. But at the moment, they're appropriately a bubble team.
Man, Wilson, we appreciate your time, man. We know it's bye week, so you get a chance to kind of relax a little bit, catch up on some television shows or something, and lock in for Alabama. Welcome in Alabama next week.
That's right. It's going to be awesome. That night atmosphere in Tiger Stadium with Alabama coming to town is going to be a good one. But I appreciate y'all having me on.
Absolutely. That's Wilson Alexander, who covers LSU for the Advocate down in Baton Rouge. She joins us on the Buyers Right hotline for all your insurance, financial, and HR needs. It's Buyers Right Insurance, a Higham Botham partner. Return here on Mac and Cube. We'll take a look at some of the games this weekend as the Texas A&M Fighting Aggies are retaking their trip to Columbia, South Carolina, and it's a small Vegas line that we have to discuss. We'll discuss that when we return here on Mac and Cube on Jocks 94.5. $9:35 here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell alongside John Saybear holding it down for a few more moments. As guys had to step out for a little bit, but we're continuing to have some fun talking some ball here on the show. Let me tell you about my friend Ben Hedden of the Beham Realty Group. If you think about selling your home, and when it comes to selling, you only want excellence, you need to give my buddy Ben a call at 205-568-2705 or go to BehamRealtyCo.com. If you're struggling to get your house sold because the markets are changing every single day, you need an expert that focuses on adapting at half the time to make sure you and your squad come out on top. That's Ben Hedden of the Beham Realty Group. You can visit their website at BehamRealtyCo.com or give them a call at 205-568-2705. Yes, we know Alabama is on a bye week this week, but we still have some exciting action across the SEC this weekend. And, of course, Auburn taking on Vanderbilt. Vandy looks to right the wrongs that they had against Texas, and Diego Pavia looks to stay undefeated against Hugh Freeze, no matter where he's at, whether it's Liberty or Auburn. But I think one of the more interesting games because of the line, and I know it's strictly on Vegas, but the Texas A&M and South Carolina matchup, because of what we saw last week from Texas A&M, they're opened up as a 2.5-point favorite on the road in Columbia. And we know it's something about this South Carolina team where they have yet to put a full 4 quarters to truly be dominant. Now, defensive line-wise, Kennard and Stewart, no ands, ifs, or buts about it. They are 2 bookends that you have got to block those guys if you're Texas A&M. But I think for Texas A&M, they're riding this momentum after the Notre Dame loss where it feels like week after week they're finding ways. They beat the brakes off of Missouri there a couple weeks ago. Then last week, a real gutsy victory by putting Marcel Reed into that offense, and they completely changed. It completely gave them a new look. And I think that for Texas A&M, one, if you're going to take the Connor Wigman approach of saying, all right, well, he was our starter, he's been our guy, we'll keep Marcel just in case of emergency. But to me, going against Lenore Sellers and that offense that South Carolina has, one, you're probably looking at each other. We're pretty similar in a lot of things. I think that the weapons that Texas A&M has as far as their run game, not to say Rocket Sanders isn't, good for South Carolina, but for Amari Daniels and Le'Veon Moss in that backfield, who it took them a little bit in the LSU game to get rolling, but once they did, they found their identity. And I think that's probably your best recipe to try to neutralize what you're going to see on the South Carolina defensive side is continuing to run the football.
I think if you're South Carolina, you're kind of bummed that you had your bye week after. I know you said you hadn't seen a complete. I might argue that their most complete game was against Oklahoma. I mean, they kind of put it on them in all phases of everything. Now, granted, turnovers did help out quite a bit, but still, they took advantage of that. We've seen in how many other games where teams will get turnovers and not take advantage of it. So both times, South Carolina, when they had their bye week this week, it came off lopsided wins. Remember, a couple of weeks ago, they put it on Akron 50-7.
Yep.
And then they followed it up with, 27-3 against Ole Miss. So, yeah, if you're South Carolina, you're kind of taking the bye at the wrong time. But also, while I'd like to think that even though Brian Kelly said we just, we didn't execute and everyone else at LSU was saying that we just didn't prepare for it, you're not going to catch South Carolina now off guard with bringing in Marcel Reed. So they're going to have to devote time and now an extra week of time to be able to prepare for that. But if you're South Carolina, if you really, truly want to be taken seriously in this league, which that's great that you got that dominant win over Oklahoma, but kind of where's Oklahoma at right now?
Right.
And the 3 losses that South Carolina has on the season are to teams that are currently ranked. So they've beaten the teams that they're supposed to, and so far they've lost the teams that, in theory, they should. And to be fair, 2 of those 3, like the LSU game, probably should have won. When you did lose Lenore Sellers for some of it, and that Alabama game, I'm not gonna say they should have won that game, but
yeah, they had opportunities.
They had so many. They had ball in hand under a minute left on the plus side of the field. A lot of it was right there. So if you're South Carolina, you need to. I do think you're right in that the ends definitely need to. They need to wreak havoc, but they have to be careful because, assuming it will be, if not starting Marcel, at least he'll be in the game. If you try and contain him, or if you try and go after him, he's going to slip out, and that's where he was at his most dangerous. And that's one thing that gave Nick Saban fits. It's given Kirby Smart fits. It's given a lot of those coaches fits. And I can see where it's hard for a pass rush, a DN, a linebacker, whatever, someone, you're instinctively, it's see ball, get ball. And so you see the quarter right there. I've got a shot at him. No, you've got to stay in that lane. Stay right there. Make sure he stays there because he can't beat us with his arm. He can beat us with his legs. If you just stay right there and kind of keep him contained, don't let him get past you. Don't approach him because if he'll go around you and then he's burned us. So I think that's going to be the most difficult part of this game is South Carolina's pass rush having to adjust, assuming it's just Marcel Reed. But even if Connor gets in there, it's like, okay, well, now I know I can let I can throw caution to the wind and go after it. So if South Carolina can do that, then yes, absolutely. On the flip side, if you're A&M, now last week people were kind of noticing, even though, yes, everyone knew that you were atop the SEC standings technically after last week, they still didn't quite see it and kind of figured that, okay, well, LSU will kind of take care of business. And sure enough, well, they didn't. And now Texas A&M is still there. So now you're officially the hunted. Even though you kind of were earlier, now you're getting everyone's best shot, especially now that they know the secret weapon you have in Marcel Reed. So how are you going to handle this newfound attention? That to me is one of the bigger questions, especially coming off of such a enigmatic win. Can you calm it down and then hit reset to realize you were 1-0 last week? That's great. That was a big win, but still you got another one in front of you.
Yeah. And now A&M has reached this point, and I like Mike Elko. I think I knew when he got there it was gonna change. I didn't expect it to be this fast. And they're finding ways to get it done. And they could have laid an egg against LSU. They were down 17-7 at the half, and it's kind of, oh man, Texas A&M, maybe they're not where we thought they were. But then Garrett Nussmeier starts to turn the ball over. They start to, like you said, they put in Marcel Reed. He starts to execute at a different level, and LSU looked completely unprepared. And to your point, that South Carolina, you're not gonna sneak up on us with Marcel Reed this week. It's okay, well, if Connor Wigman is going to be there, secondary, make sure your eyes are open. Make sure you disguise some things. And I think for South Carolina, going back to even the Alabama matchup, there have been moments where for them to be as young as they are, they play above their weight a good bit. And I think that when you go and watch the Kentucky game, they started on the defensive side. They're almost like a bend, not a necessarily bend but don't break, but it's, okay, if we can limit the possessions and we can turn these teams over, we're not asking our offense to go out there and give us, 30 points a game. It's just don't blow it, because your defense is keeping you within the ball game. And that's why I kind of look at this matchup and Texas A&M only being a 2.5 point favorite. Am I buying too much in the recency bias of what we just saw from Texas A&M? Because I do think they're the better team going in. I just thought it would be a little bit more than 2.5 points as a favorite.
It does feel a little odd. It does feel a little off. And I wonder if some of that is box score looking at South Carolina, in that they took them down 35-9. And yes, Oklahoma is not the Oklahoma that they were. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, this probably is the Oklahoma that they were. But at the time, they hadn't had all these losses.
Yeah.
So when they took on Texas, it was ranked. I think they were 18, whatever. They had a digit in front, or double digit in front of their name on the scoreboard. Now, not so much, but still, I think you're coming off of your most complete conference game. We'll just say that at least. And so A&M, even though, yes, they got the win and it was a convincing win, LSU still had their opportunities. They just really that what Cole call it, the turnover genome. Just I guess it was recessive for a little bit for Nussmeier, and then it became dominant at some point during that game. So it's not that I wonder if Vegas just doesn't believe in it. It's more of a, okay, like, yes, you handled Missouri, but maybe Missouri is not exactly what they thought they were. You flipped it against LSU, and you found a way maybe they weren't expecting. Maybe this is, all right, now, you know what? Prove it to me, because this does feel like a spot where in the past A&M would fall on their face.
Yep.
And so maybe that's why the line is, what'd you say, 2.5, 3? It's
2.5.
So in essence, I mean, I guess they think there are 5.5, like 6 point whatever team, but because it is on the road, and this is they went to Mississippi State a couple of weeks ago, but other than that, I think this is the second time A&M has been on the road since the third week since Florida.
Yeah, it is.
So yes, they did go, but again, it was Mississippi State, and while that box score, I think, was it 34-24, that game looks closer than it honestly actually was. So this is the first time they're actually getting a real road test, or at least in a long time. Plus, you have a true freshman most likely getting his first, or at least seeing his first action in the road. So I can see why it's deceptively low, but I think I'm ready to start believing in Texas A&M because of how gritty they have been this entire season and finding ways to get those wins.
Yeah, and it's a difficult thing to process that. Yes, I'm looking at Texas A&M, and they're a good football team, man. And it pains me to say it. It really breaks my heart to say it.
Imagine if McLaren was still here.
Like, to have to admit that when you watch this Texas A&M team, they're pretty good.
I wonder if it's because it's a guy like Elko. Now, if this success were happening under Jimbo, nobody would be like it. They would be the Yankees. They would be the Lakers. Like, no one would want this. But because it's a Sam Pittman-like person in Elko, and it's like, you know what? I kind of like him, so you want the success for it. They haven't had the success. It's not unlike Orgeron back 5-6 years or so ago. You wanted them to have that success because you liked the guy.
Exactly.
And then he got it, and then he's all right, now you're too much. It's kind of like Dabo not too long ago when they won. Well, okay, maybe not around here because it was against Alabama, but you wanted him to have that success because I kind of like that guy. Everything's going great, but then the whole what was it, the Roy bus?
Yeah, the rest of y'all.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Now you're doing too much. Now we want you to lose every single game. So I guess we're in that honeymoon phase of Texas A&M, so they can keep winning for a little bit and probably help that at least around here. They didn't have any of the well, I know they play them later, but as of yet, they haven't had the local teams on the schedule. So it's like, they can keep winning. That's fine. But come the 23rd, maybe half the state's going to want them to lose.
I'm telling you, man, it's crazy to see. But Texas A&M standing at the top of the SEC. Didn't think we'd be saying that in 2024. When we return here on Mac and Cube in the morning, believe it or not, John, we got a bad box score to talk about. Keep it locked right here on Jocks 94.5. $9:51 here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell, John Saber here with you for a few more minutes as we pass you off to three-man front. Jam-packed day. Jam-packed day here on Jocks 94.5. And, of course, right after three-man front, you got the legend himself, Paul Feinbaum, coming up at 2 p.m. till 6 p.m. here on Jocks 94.5. And now, as we do each and every day, we celebrate the best of the worst with our bad box score of the day.
Personal foul, 69, offense. He was giving them the business.
Intentional grounding, offense number 7. It's a 10-yard penalty. I'm talking to America here, excuse me.
That's the game.
I take you to Division III football over the weekend. The Lake Forest.
The Lake Forest, not Wake Forest, not
Lake.
Tim Duncan and CP3.
Lake
Forest. They are the Lake for Lakers.
No, they are the Foresters.
Okay, that's worse.
They squeaked by the Ripon.
They're the Reeds.
They, like where your head's at. They are the Redhawks.
Okay, it seems simple. That's okay.
Right.
Whatever.
The Lake Forest Foresters moved to 7-0.
All right.
After a 66-0 win over Ripon Redhawks.
They were not ripping that game. Okay.
They were not. Third downs, as you could tell, probably a little lopsided. Lake Forest was 5 for 8, while Ripon was 2 for 10.
Okay, that's 20% is not a bad ROI, but not a great third down percentage. All right.
Lake Forest, they did some damage in the air. 296.
All right.
Passing.
Okay.
To Ripon's 88.
Okay.
And it was a ground and pound game for the Lake Forest Foresters as they ran for 322 yards.
All right.
To Ripon's 7.
That is
almost
a 50 double up.
Yeah, so it brings the total offense for Lake Forest and Ripon 618 to 95.
Ugh, that is a 6 double up, and unfortunate. Well, it's very scary with Halloween coming. That's very fitting that this is the one you went with.
Yeah, and somebody that we probably missed on About It yesterday, Joshua Gaska, the quarterback for Lake Forest.
Of course, right.
17 for 20, 289 yards, 7 passing touchdowns.
Okay, yeah, he should have been there. All right, that counts.
Yeah, and he had his targets. I will say this: his guys, his brother AJ Jackson, 6 catches for 144 yards, had 2 touchdowns. Tommy Carberry.
All right.
Carberry,
okay.
yes.
Right. Famous AJ Jackson. Okay.
4 catches, 52 yards, 3 touchdowns. T. Land. Yes, T-E-E. Land. Had 2 catches for 34 yards and 2 touchdowns. So,
I've seen a T. Martin, a T. Land. I've seen Mr. T, but an Ice T. But all right, T. Land. All right.
Hey, but it wasn't all bad for Ripon, man. Their punter Shane French, 6 punts for 200 yards, and one of them was inside the 20.
Go ahead, French. Go all the way.
Absolutely. It was also good for the kick return game. They did not have Lake Forest didn't have any touchbacks, so they kicked off to Gage Taylor, who had 6 returns for 129 yards. Not ideal.
Yeah. No, when special teams is the highlight of your game, you deserve to be in this segment.
Hey, they were handling business. Clay Richard for Lake Forest had 12 tackles, 5 for tackle for losses. So he
all
was
5?
5 of them. 5 of his 12.
Oh, 12. Oh, okay.
5 of his 12 were tackles for losses. So he was having himself a day as the Lake Foresters moved to 7-0 after knocking off the Ripon Redhawks.
Did you ever play either of these teams?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not. They are located in Illinois, Lake Forest, Illinois.
Okay, both are. Oh, well, I mean, y'all couldn't travel for games, or
we didn't go that far.
Okay.
We went to the University of Chicago. That was only because they were in our conference for 2 years.
Okay,
that was an interesting trip. Lost that one, but try not to remember those moments.
Yeah. Well, you should, because you lost a lot of them.
Yeah, that is true.
All you have is memories right now.
You ain't lying. You ain't lying. Hope everybody has a great Wednesday. We'll be back tomorrow, of course, the coach, Wimp Sanderson. He might be a little spooky on his Blue Plate special. It is Halloween. Wonder what his top 3 candies are for Halloween. He's had a few in his lifetime, I think you should see. So, for Cole Cubelic and Greg McElroy.
It's cotton candy. You know it is.
Guess what? That cotton picking candy. Oh, for Greg and Cole, John Saybear, I am Damian Mitchell. We appreciate y'all locking with us for the past 3 hours. We'll pass you off to 3-man front. Everybody's assembled. looking bushy-eyed, well, wide-eyed and bushy-tailed. They're locked in, ready to have some fun with you. So keep it locked right here for Three Man Front on Jocks 94.5.